I'd like to call to order the City Council Workshop meeting of August 7th, 2023. Everybody please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would anybody like to lead us in a prayer? Otherwise, we'll just have a moment of silence. Amen. Amen.
Mayor Dunn,
Here.
Vice Mayor Inskeep is absent. Councilperson Mendoza. Here. Councilman Lehman.
Here.
Councilwoman Tubby. Jan Smith, Finance Officer.
Here.
Chad Ward, Public Works Manager.
Here.
Chief Scaglione.
We got lice now.
Michelle Leonard, Assistant Clerk. Here. City Attorney Andrew Hand.
I'm here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the city's website and City Hall Bulletin Board on Monday, July 31st, 2023, and amended on August 2nd to add agenda item number 8.
Okay, I've got a couple announcements. One, remember the exit is the way you came in is behind you in case there's any kind of emergency.
Page on.
Do what? Oh, I got it. I haven't got to it yet. The other thing I wanted to advise everybody, we just learned that the water main up around Chatmire has broken. And apparently the water pressure in town is now down significantly. In parts of this town, the water is actually coming through the pipes is brown. More than likely, first of all, GA is all over. They're trying to get it resolved. But more than likely with that, Dunnellon may be under a boil water directive here shortly. But I wanted to warn everybody, this has just happened. Next, we will allow public comments at the start of the meeting and at the end. I have only one request, that if there's anything in it that you want to talk about, you're welcome to talk for 3 minutes about anything. If you want to talk about the short-term rental ordinance, please make sure you address your comments based on the latest version of the ordinance. And the reason I bring this up, I think it was 5 emails and 2 phone calls this weekend about this ordinance, and every one of them were about things that had been removed from the ordinance over a month ago. So please make sure you address your comments based on the latest ordinance. Thank you. Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes. All in favor?
Okay.
I'm Dr. Paula Cover, and I live at 11983 Palmetto Way, Dunnellon, Florida. I'm just avidly addressing some concerns about safety on the river. I live on the corner of Palmetto Way, right by the bridge, and I've been in the medical field for 59 years. My husband and I have been 30 years having our own private practice. That house that we live in is zoned residential commercial. Thing is, it's very anxiety provoking to see the things that children swimming across the river with boats coming very fast. They see the boat, they turn around and they swim back. It's very hard as a person I was the nurse educator for the United States government children in Germany. And my job was safety coordination for the children of parents. And it's very hard for me to ignore real, true, honest to God, life-threatening possibilities. And one person has already been killed in that area. So I just want to say I have to see something done. And I don't know what to do about it, but I know that it is a community issue, and that if we all put our heads together, that we can come out with something very good. I have also been an OB nurse, a pediatric nurse, a psychiatric nursing professor at Hillsborough Community College, and I was voted one of the top 5 doctors in the Tampa Bay area for achieving the results with patients. It's not that I'm here to recruit anyone. I have too many patients already because I'm 78 years old, and it's a big deal to keep going this long. But I cannot give up my desire for Dunnellon's River to be a safe place. And I won't go through all the possible tragedies I have witnessed in the last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
David Cover.
My name is David Cover. I live at 11983 Palmetto Way, Dunnellon, Florida. And before the meeting started, I spoke to Chad about one issue I had, which is we walk on the trail across from our house every day, and there's when I told Chad there weren't any doggy bags there, he said, well, the county's supposed to be responsible for providing those. And he promised to get in touch with them, and I'll follow up also. But it's as the bags have disappeared, the dog excrement has increased. So Chad says he's going to help me with that. But between the two of us, hopefully we'll get that resolved shortly. The other issue my wife spoke about was a safety issue at the river bridge. With that, on the weekends with the tuber takeout and the people launching kayaks, this past weekend, Pinellas County sent up their paddleboard club. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, there was 175 paddleboarders in the river between the bridge and our house. You could not get a boat upriver. Matter of fact, 2 boats came up the river and they had to stop and beat their horn and this, that, and the other. And it has become the safety, my wife is right, it's a safety issue. And I know the police department is working on signs, and the public works is working on signs. I think to solve the issues is that Water Management District needs to declare that area. We've declared the side where the ramp is a no-swim area. The other side needs to be declared a no-swim area. This past weekend, I saw a man that could barely swim himself, taking 2 toddlers, both probably under 2 because they couldn't swim. They did not have life vests on, right? He's swimming on his back, trying to keep the kids and himself above water, right? After the paddleboarders left, right? Fortunately, a boat came by and saw him. He couldn't have gotten out of the way if he had to. The boat had to slam on it and put it in reverse, full throttle backward to keep from running over him and the kids. So that's a safety issue. We need to get the signs up, no swimming in that area. And I know we're working on some stuff. I haven't seen all the signs that are going up. I'm sure you guys will take care of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Viola Sugg.
Viola Sove, 18755 Southwest 60th Street, Dunnellon, Florida. If a house is being rented to a stranger, shouldn't all the strangers be afforded the same reasonable safety precautions? Shouldn't all houses be inspected for CO2 detectors, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, no extension cords, and the use of thumb latches on the doors? After all, they can be a fire hazard too, just like you feel we were going to be. Shouldn't all the rental properties have a sign that shows where the fire extinguishers are, the CO2 and the smoke detectors are, and as well as where they're allowed to park? Should all rentals be required to be available, should all the rental owners be required to be available 24/7 to be within the property within 2 hours of an emergency call? In this case, then all the renters, whether they're 3 days or 365 days, should fall under the same fire and safety category. People, no matter who they are allowed, or how long they rent, should have the same basic safety precautions provided by the owners. If not, then it just proves the city's only interested in taking out the short-term rentals and all the income that they generate throughout the city, while letting long-term renters get away with everything, like parking on the streets, loud parties, up to 20 people living in a house, and families sleeping in RVs beside the house. The council should take a hard look at all rentals, and not just short-term rentals. The city needs to worry about every renter safety, not just the short-term. Just food for thought.
Thank you.
Katie, guys?
Good evening. Katie Geis, 12205 Palmetto Way. First want to say thank you. I think a lot of our concerns have been heard. I've seen a lot of good progress and many edits made in this version of concerns and issues that we've seen in the past. So I think we're making good progress. I want to be clear that I can support a simple registration with very straightforward expectations, process, timelines, and accountabilities for both short-term rental owners and for the city. There's one primary sticking point that I still have remaining, and that has to do with inspections. For a number of reasons. One, it's not something that the city has planned for or budgeted for of all of these things. Creating this program and the inspections and the enforcement will be very costly. Two, this is not a problem that needs to be solved. This initiated with some concerns over the bad behavior of certain guests. Now we're solving different types of problems. I don't believe that the city should be taking on what is an expectation and rules and regulations of the state. And in fact, the state has been very clear about the expectations for short-term rentals in their vacation guidelines. And none of this communication, which is very simple and straightforward and easy to understand what's expected of us, inspections are not a part of this. Also, I've called Marion County twice now and spoken with 2 different people there asking them to come and inspect my home. It is not a practice. They do not do that. They say to me they don't have jurisdiction to inspect a single-family home. So there's a lot of confusion. It's very cumbersome. It's not something that the city should be taking on right now to pass on because it's not even a viable pathway for us. Help us have clear expectations and outline specifically what safety inspections are required, and that is something that can be supported by acknowledgement in the registration, while at the same time providing the safe behaviors that you all are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Sickler?
My name is Andy Sickler, and I'm at 11805 East Blue Cove Drive. And I wanted to commend the progress that has been made and everything, but I feel that there's a little ways to go. And I certainly hope that there's some regulating body that takes care of some of the issues that we've presented here in the past and so forth, that all of us, especially the ones that are on the river, seems like we get a whole lot more issues with that, because those rental properties, if they do go to rental, if they're anywhere close to that, there doesn't seem to be that much control over what's going on. The noise, I had 4, maybe even 5 young teenage girls the other day at 9:45 come up, bring their kayaks up on my property and everything else and walk through and so forth, and they had seen some alligators. Well, at that time of night, in breeding season, I'm not surprised. But Saturday, I mean, somebody brought it up, but Saturday was unbelievable with how many people were on the river. It was just something else. So I'm hoping that, we bought here 25 years ago. It's a quaint little town. We loved it on the river and so forth, but things have changed to a totally negative point at this, and I'm very disappointed really with what's happened in Dunnellon, and I hope that the city council and so forth will have the chutzpah or whatever it takes to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anyone else signed up, and I don't have any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Is anybody in the audience want to speak right now? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dave Porter at 11835 East Blue Cove Drive in Dunnellon. So this has been a long process. Dunnellon, I feel, is following the pathway of a lot of cities in Florida. I think that the work that the council has done, Attorney Hannah has done, is excellent. You've listened to a lot of the complaints from short-term rental owners, and I think that we've done a good compromise of taking out a lot of the personal information, a lot of the logging stuff. And from my perspective, this version of the ordinance follows and mirrors the state requirements. I think that now the basis of the ordinance is pretty much all state laws. And so those are the requirements of anybody that wants to go into owning a short-term rental, have to comply with it anyway. And so it certainly falls under the umbrella of many of the cities in Florida that have had legal challenges and won. So I congratulate the council for their work. And I think what we'll end up with is an ordinance that makes it very welcoming of Dunnellon to have short-term rentals. And it'll make it a safe place for people to come and not get injured. And it will have the short-term rentals fit into our neighborhood. So I appreciate your work.
Thank you. Is anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Walter Johnson. I live at 12151 Palmetto Way. I'm not sure how you put it in the ordinance, but there needs to be some limit on what is a single-family dwelling. 2 doors from me, there were 12 cars. There was close to 30 people. They were pitching tents out in the yard so they could sleep. I actually saw one of them stop and urinate right on the lawn because he was too lazy to go back to the house. Issues like that shouldn't be happening in a single-family dwelling. And I don't like the response, well, call the police. The person who's making that money should have a person here who will quickly put a stop to that. That went in all night, and then the person had a laser show in the trees across the river, up and down. I go to bed at 9:30. I had to ask my neighbor how long the show went on. We went to bed, it was 12 o'clock. He had shown laser stuff on the big cypress trees across the river. Things like that are unreasonable. Don't tell me to call the police, because they can't really do anything. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, Amber.
Amber Serena, 11426 Hendricks Drive. I see that 9 Island Cove is on the agenda for tonight, and I just want to thank Paul Marafino, may he rest in peace, for all the hard work that he did, and the group of people who worked so diligently to get this moving towards the Florida Forever program, and our advocates in Tallahassee, and Mr. and Mrs. Jones for all of their hard work in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak? Okay. I appreciate that. All right. Now we need board reports. Other than the chamber. Yes, ma'am.
Brenda Giarbo, 11661 Camp Drive. I have nothing to report. The last meeting, the committee finished up the last of the training modules that were purchased on our behalf for the council, and we'd just like to thank you for that. And I'm not quite sure what's on the horizon in future meetings, but I've been hearing a lot of rumors around town about several new businesses coming. So hopefully that will come before our committee and before this council, so that's pretty exciting. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, is any other board reports? Okay, the Dunnellon Chamber.
Hello, I'm Judy Twilliger. I'm the director of the Dunnellon Chamber. We have some new members, Camp Associates, Therapy in the Garden, Riviera Maya Mexican Restaurant, and Backyard Boarding. We have a bunch of upcoming events as well. August 9th, we have Drumming Fever at the Rainbow Springs Art Co-op. It's on 20804 West Pennsylvania Avenue. August 10th, we have Pickleball at Rainbow Lakes Estates, 23050 Southwest Seacliff Avenue. On August 11th, we have another Whistle Stop Cafe from 5 to 9 a.m. at the Historic Train Depot, and the music is going to be by Buddy Shaw. The address for that is 12061 South William Street, Dunnellon. August 12th, we have Abstract Art 2, There Is No Failure, at the Rainbow Springs Art Co-op, 20804 West Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's going to run from 1 to 3. August 14th, Pickleball again from 8:30 to 9 at the Rainbow Lakes Estates, 23050 Southwest Seacliff Avenue. August 14th, Acrylic Adventures, Let's Paint the Horse it's called, and that's at the Rainbow Springs Art Co-op from 4 to 6 p.m. The address is 20804 West Pennsylvania Avenue, Dunnellon. September 2nd, Dunnellon Spar Building and Farm Supply, the Farm Swap, is from 8 to 12, and that's on 2915 West Dunnellon Road. September 16th, we have the Dunnellon Duck Race at Swampy's, starting at 9 a.m. The address for that is 19773 East Pennsylvania Avenue, Dunnellon. September 21st to the 25th, we have the Vietnam Traveling Wall at Ernie Mills Park. September 26th, we have the dinner mixer at the Boys and Girls Club at 5:30. And dinners are $20 for members and $25 for non-members. That's all we have today. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like a full schedule. Okay. All right. We'll go on to item number 4. Discussion of the lease agreements for Optical Tel and the Rainbow Springs Art Inc. I know this came up for discussion some time ago, and I'm not even sure where we left it, other than we were going to talk about it again.
Yeah, we were just asked to put it back on the agenda for you. The only thing I have on it is Vice Mayor Inskeep since he couldn't be here, he sent me some comments that he wanted me to share with you all on this subject.
Okay.
In his comments, it says, see spreadsheet for budgeted revenue and expenditures. No further improvements to the building at the taxpayer's expense should be approved. And he also, he provided me with with a spreadsheet that outlines the amount of rent that Optical Tel pays, the amount of rent that the art group pays. And he worked out what he felt was a fairly reasonable estimate as far as city staff time, mainly at Public Works and building repair and maintenance. The pest control, the budgeted improvements, the, what was this, property insurance, annual fire inspection, lost revenue from property tax revenue, and it came out to be total budgeted expense just about $5 under what the rent is costing, so it's almost a net there. Some of the comments were, one lease is dependent upon the other for financial stability and funding the building. Expenses related to other IT administrative time and legal review is not accounted for. Example, staff calls and meetings with RSA, wants and needs, follow-up on items such as scheduling inspection, electrical inspection, cost analysis for certain things, and IT spending time dealing with a leak over in the optical side of the building and covering the equipment damage. So those are just some of his comments. And that's really all I have. So I think you all were going to discuss, because he worked in a 5% increase. So that was one of the things that you all discussed was perhaps adding a 5% increase to each of the lease agreements if you're going to stay in those. One of the other things that Vice Mayor had suggested was instead of doing 3-year leases, do a 1-year lease until you determine whether or not it's feasible to keep the building and continue to lease it out, or to sell the building and put it back on the tax roll.
Right. Okay. I remember all this now. Sorry, no comments right now. Does anybody on the council have anything to say about this? Want to talk about it? I've got some, but I just want y'all to go first.
Well, as I said before, I think that the Rainbow Springs is a valuable asset because it's part of what makes Dunnellon. I looked at I know that I had asked Chad to get a cost for the painting the building, and the cost was, how much was it? It was,
one was $6,500 plus material, the other one was $6,500 with material.
right, and they've asked, and the people who run the art show, the art building, have volunteered to paint the building. So that's part of it, and my concern with it is that do we really want to give up a building that's got something that is part of what makes Dunnellon? And I personally have rented property, and I think that as far as I know, they're asking for a new front door, and if I had property that I rented, and after 5 years, I had only had to replace a front door, I would be on my hands and knees trying to get them to stay, because stuff just gets destroyed and they're taking care of it. And there was another point I had, but it slipped my mind. But I do see the value of it, and I do support keeping it, and I think that if they're willing to do that, and it's every building is going to wear out. And my other concern was, once we sell the building, if we grow or we decide we need the building, then we have to go buy another building. And that's something else to take into consideration. And once we have the money and the money's spent, we really have nothing left, whereas now we'll be at the equity. So that would be my opinion.
Okay.
My opinion is that every town needs a community center, and what Rainbow River Art has done there is has created a community center that is central to this community. We have many, many retired people here, and I know that is a place that they enjoy so much going to. And then the fact that these people are producing artworks that represent the talent of the city. It is, that place is a showcase for people who reside not only in the city but around us. And then when you look at the art festival they put on yearly, the amount of people it draws and how much people enjoy that festival, I just want to do everything possible for Rainbow River art.
Okay. Go ahead.
And if I followed all of it correctly, the art festival will no longer be part of the lease, so that's not something that, like initially, the lease agreement had talked about an annual festival. So that's one of the things that's being removed from the updated lease. As far
For now,
as,
anyway, that
oh,
might change.
yeah, I was talking. As far as replacing just the front door, I do think that the city has listened to a lot of what the Art Council has requested and done a lot more than replacing the front door. So I think that the proposed increase in rent of 5% is very reasonable. And I think that looking at the rest of the lease to really make clear who's responsible for what as things go forward would be important. I'm in agreement with a one-year lease as opposed to something longer. Yeah, that's my feedback.
Okay.
And pardon me, but Chad, would you speak to the request for the electrical, what you were told by the fire inspector?
Yeah, we had the electrical inspectors out there. They did inspection of the building and no electrical issues with the building. They also wanted to put kiln in for drying pottery and stuff like that. According to the fire inspector, the cost to do that would be kind of astronomical to us because now the building would be required to be sprinklered. There would have to be a wall built as a fire stop from floor to ceiling to split that in Alcatel since there's kiln and stuff in there. Which he said the cost, electrical wiring would have to be redone for 220 and everything, which he said the cost would just be, huge hit for the city. We did have the door checked out. There's nothing wrong with the door. Actually, they have a stop in the door that when you open it, it bangs, tell you somebody's there, which was about a ½ inch too far in, so the door doesn't shut because that stop needs moved back. They're also requesting a switch put in that they can turn all the lights on at the front door, which switches in the middle of the building. We'd have to have that rewired so that switch would operate all the lights through there. So that's another request they have.
Right.
Also.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a big one, but the kiln thing is big. Okay. When I look at the lease itself, things that are general maintenance, I think we have always agreed to take care of. So front doors, painting it, whatever, that clearly should be in there. There's a provision in the lease that does say, however, that if there's a major modification in anything like electrical, that's the responsibility of the lessee, not the lessor. So my opinion is if they want to put in a kiln, that's fine. They're just going to have the cost of doing that. I remember where this got before, and first off, back to what Julianne said, I think a one-year lease makes sense. I think a 5% increase right now makes sense, and I think we try to address the things they want that are within the lease that we should be taking care of. Things outside the lease, like the rewiring of the building for a kiln, we can discuss that with them, but that's outside of the lease. The reason I think we put this off altogether was I know Tim in the meeting and I in the meeting echoed that why does the city of Dunnellon own buildings? Why do we own property that's not being used by the city? And I still raise that concern, but I don't think we can resolve that in a very short period of time. So I think going on and leasing it another year makes sense, but I think not only this building, but all the other buildings that we own, which they're not many, and honestly, all the property we own in this town, some of it's just raw land, I think the city needs to take a hard look at why we own it, because if we sell it to somebody, they maintain it, and then we get property taxes from it, although that's not very much. But I'm for doing a 5% increase and doing a 1-year lease, and then we've got to evaluate personally. I know you provided all of us a list of all the property owned by this town, and there's a lot that we own. I don't know why we own it. I mean, clearly, City Hall, maintenance, police station, these kind of things, and the fire station make sense. But a lot of this, just land, doesn't make sense. So I'd say we move forward with it and do a 5% increase and with both of them and go with that.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make one comment.
Sure.
If they do decide to put a kiln in,
Mm-hmm.
it could increase the cost to insure the building. So that's something that, you know, should be looked into.
Oh, yeah. If they're going to do that, we got to be involved. Because like you said, that if we have to put in a firewall between the two buildings, that kind of, I don't see, and I don't want to speak for the Rainbow Art, but that's going to be a lot of money. And I'm not sure that we'll do that.
If I could just say something, I had a lengthy conversation with Bridget Hanley, and she said they were more than amicable to just withdraw that request for the kiln.
Okay. Because, I mean, I understood what they asked. I mean, if I was leasing something, I'd ask for everything too. Okay, I get it. But again, once we looked at the lease and realized it wasn't really in the lease, I just want to make sure it's clear. If they want to do it, that's fine. But like Chad says, the fire inspection brought up a lot of things. The good news was, the way the building is right now, it passed. Now, we go make major modifications. The other thing about this switch in the front instead of the middle, I think we need to take care of that. That won't be a big deal.
The art gallery did also have a proposal in there too, that they would paint the building.
Yeah, that's fine. We give them the product, let them paint.
Well, they would paint it, I think, with keeping the rent the same or
Yeah.
something along that direction.
Okay.
That was something you had to do.
Just one question on that. When they say paint the building, do they mean the Optic Hotel building too?
That I don't know. I believe it's the art center, but it's all the building.
Right. Well, I would say what we need to tell the art center is bring back a proposal without the kiln and everything else they're willing to do, and take a look at it. But I think we can reach an agreement, especially for 1 year. Okay.
The final thing on that, Wally, the last thing I see that they had asked was for the word fixtures to be defined more clearly going forward. So maybe that's an adjustment that we can make as we rewrite that agreement.
Sure. Sure. Okay. All right. Y'all good with that?
Yeah. And I believe the 5% is an agreement with what we did. We raised the parking rates and everything to account.
We did.
It was.
That was the same rate we did on all the parking and everything else we've already approved. So 5% ought to be reasonable. But again, let's send it back to them, get them to make the modifications, and then let's look at it.
And one thing we need to know pretty soon is whether or not we need to take that $6,000 out of the budget for the painting, because we put $6,000 in the budget based on the quotes that Chad got. So if that needs to come out, we need to know that.
We still got to buy the paint, right?
I don't think if they painted, I think they was gonna paint it and then just leave the rent the same, but
Okay.
I'm not sure 100% on that.
Well, let's confirm that, and then we can adjust that. But right now, I just leave it like we got it in the budget, okay, for $6,000. We can handle $6,000. Okay. All right, that it? We all good? Okay. Vacation rental ordinance. We have attached to the agenda the latest version of all the changes made to the short-term rental ordinance from a number of meetings, not only with the planning and zoning, but also with this council. We've had 3 meetings on this. Most of it mirrored, at least in my opinion, reading it, mirrored what we had concluded at the last meeting of what we wanted to put in, what we wanted to take out. And we added a few things to kind of clarify where some of this information was coming from and trying to outline it pretty straightforward. I have heard from a lot of people. Like I said, I got a lot of emails, calls, texts, talk to people on the phone. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think we'll ever get it perfect, but I think we've come down to something, in my opinion, that should be amenable to a lot of folks. It's not perfect for, I think, the people who live next to a short-term rental, and I don't think it's perfect to the people who own short-term rentals. The issue that keeps coming up on the fire inspection, I will follow up personally on that, because when I called fire department in Marion County, I was told how much it would cost and they could do it. Now, you're hearing something different, and I totally believe you, okay? We will get that resolved, because before this fire department left here and went to Marion County, all fire inspections were done by our fire department. And part of this agreement with them was they were supposed to do them. And I know we had all our buildings fire inspected when we found out they hadn't been, and we just hired an independent contractor, I believe, to get that done. But we will get that resolved, so the owners will have a way to solve this problem and get you as much information as we can. Because I do believe that may be what you're hearing. But again, about a year ago, I was given quotes, how much it would cost, how much it cost to re-inspect, and it was like $40 for each inspection. But again, I will confirm, we will have a way for all the short-term rental people to have their houses fire inspected, okay? Andrew, do you want to cover any of this, or does anybody up here want to cover any of this? My eyes are bad, so.
Comments?
Yeah, sure.
I think we're beyond the writing of the ordinance now. I think council's done a great job of scratching out all of those regulations that we thought were maybe a little too extraordinary, placing them. And now the chief concern is, I have been hearing from our short-term rental owners, is the statements that have been made as to who's going to pay for the ordinance. And I'm just going to read a couple of statements, actually, straight from the...
Would you like me to address that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, what I want to do is just, I want to read comments, and very briefly, that were made during our past workshops for those people who were not attending. And this was from the June 26th special workshop. Mayor Wally Dunn stated the following: "It is legal to charge these short-term rental people 100% of the cost of the annual administrative costs of this short-term rental ordinance," and did not get into the specifics. There will not be any cost to the city. It will be rolled into the STR administrative cost and passed on to the STR people. So the questions that I've been fielding are, number one, are the $9,000 or $10,000 plus dollars in legal fees that are already attached to this ordinance, is that going to be part of the cost? Going to be passed to STR owners? How many STR registered owners are known right now? So we can figure out what is our piece of the cost pie going to be. I'd also like to very briefly define the term tax. Online Merriam-Webster Dictionary. A tax is a sum levied on persons or their property to defray expenses. So you may call this a tax that's going to be placed on those persons who are residents of Dunnellon already paying property taxes. They're going to be given another tax. I'd like to quote Mayor Dunn from the October 12th Riverland News. When he was campaigning, he stated, and this is again directly out of the Riverland News report, they quoted Mayor Dunn as saying, "I will reduce the tax burden for all residents." That's all I have to say.
Okay. Would you like me to address that? Okay. First of all, I have been corrected about one thing I said. First of all, the cost of administering this plan will be taxed or passed, not taxed. It's a fee. It's a business license. Passed to the owners of the short-term rental. The $10,000 spent on legal fees will not be passed, must be capitalized as part of the cost of originating this ordinance. It's part of the city's cost of doing business. The annual fee we will discuss tonight will probably be a very insignificant number. That's all I can say until we get through that discussion. As far as it being a tax, it is a business license fee. It is not a tax. Now, you can call it a tax, but it should be borne by the people running the business. It should not be borne by the people of the city of Dunnellon. And part of my discussion earlier tonight, for all of you that weren't here talking about the budget, exactly, I was going to try to reduce everyone's property taxes and got a lot of pushback from this council earlier tonight in that budget meeting, because we can reduce the cost of taxes. But that is not to be decided. And I was the only one that stood up here and said, I want to reduce taxes. So we'll decide that at the next budget meeting. But to these questions, the only misstatement I had, and I did misstate it, I said the cost of the legal fees would be passed to the short-term rental owners. It cannot be, okay? It will be, but for the cost of administering this, that is a cost that must be passed on to the short-term rental owners. We haven't totally got all the details worked out, but there was one time I thought of possibly spending quite a bit of money on a software package that can handle all this. I think that's a little ridiculous, considering, depending on who you talk to and how many people you talk to, we have somewhere between 25 and probably 80 short-term rentals in this area, not necessarily in this city. I got on a call with a lady that has a couple of these rental houses here in Dunnellon, and she and I had a long discussion, and our numbers were very different. But at the end, she had come up with somewhere around 25 to 30. I had come up with around 45. But how many we got? I don't know. Until we get this ordinance and more people get registered, I think we will find out exactly how many that is. I think this year's fee, we will, I'm speaking out of turn here because we'll discuss this in a second, should be an amount that is reasonable, and we just have to see how many people get registered, and hopefully it can defer the cost in year one. And if it needs to be adjusted in year two, it'll be adjusted. The other thing that I thought was interesting when I talked to this other lady, she actually says she went through and looked at all the Department of Business Professional Regulation filings and determined there was, like I say, about 25 to 30 people that were short-term rentals in the Dunnellon city limits. My study was done based on people with Dunnellon addresses in Marion County, so at least I wasn't picking up Citrus in Levy County. In doing that, I clearly picked up people that are in the county that aren't necessarily in the city. Both of us came down to the same conclusion. Her list showed that we had one person registered in 2016, one person registered in 2017, one in 18, and one in 19. In 2022, she had 22 people registered with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. And I remind you, when did this city start talking about doing this? In 22. So my point in this is, until we started talking about it, nobody was registered in this town. Now, my numbers are slightly different, and they're higher, but that percentage is about the same. That significantly, people started registering in 2022. Again, I don't know how many we got out there. I don't think anybody knows till everybody gets registered. I do believe there are a lot of people in this town who have still not registered, but they will get registered, I hope, when we get this passed.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Wally, thank you. I think you answered.
I tried to. Again, I misspoke when I talked about the legal fees being passed on. They won't be, because it has to be capitalized.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd be interested in just a little further conversation down the line, because I think right now we're trying to talk about the meat of the ordinance, but this idea of, some of the software that helps us identify where these are, as opposed to just guessing or having neighbors call who they really think. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the cost of the software and then
Sure.
how much time we would need it. It may only be a very short time that we would need it, but I think that's a conversation for a different time. But I just don't want to completely rule out the idea of having some kind of software.
That's fine.
help us.
That's fine. We do have a lot of things to talk about in here that are blank, that I hope we can address, and I hope everyone's read this. Again, I don't think it's perfect for the short-term rental people, and I don't think it's perfect for the people who are concerned about the short-term rentals, but I hope it's a compromise that we can all live with. And I hope we got everything kind of laid out to help folks. We will provide a lot more information. I do want people to understand that if we pass this ordinance, assuming we do, that it will be passed, but its effective date won't be until we can get a lot of things answered for not only us and get information and brochures developed for everyone that has a short-term rental, but we'll give them adequate time to get all this taken care of. We're not going to rush into something and say, okay, it's past October 1, it goes effective October 2. I mean, this is going to be months in developing, and hopefully, again, we won't get you in a bind as an owner that you have to comply with something until we know exactly how we're going to try to supervise and enforce it. Another thing I want you to understand that if you sign a lease as a short-term rental owner and it's signed today, it's not subject to these rules. So any leases, say you, and I know this happens because I was just trying to lease something in North Carolina the other day, and the place I was trying to lease was already rented up for the next year. In that case, if you have rentals that go way out into the future, even if we pass the ordinance and it's got an effective date and you've got a signed lease before that date, you're not subject to these rules. So you don't have to go back and catch things up. But once it does pass and once it is effective, then hopefully you will have the adequate information to address any concerns you have, and anything you've already done, it isn't going to be affected by this. Okay. Everybody okay with that? Andrew, did I blow that?
No, not at all, not at all, sir.
Okay.
And if council would like me to, I can kind of walk through some of the changes and
Sure.
discuss a little bit. And my hope is that at least addressing some of these and chatting about it, it should alleviate most, if not all, of the, at least the fears that I've seen that have been stated by some of the owners.
Okay.
Just a few things to touch on first. When we're talking about taxes and we're talking about user fees, there are some distinguishing characteristics, and just to point those out, and also talk a little bit about licenses, because a lot of the terms in here, I saw from the very, very beginning when we're talking about transient and that type of thing, there were a lot of objections to terms. And the terms that we see in here, the terms that are utilized are used because that is what has to be used per statutory framework. When we talk about taxes, everything becomes very specific when we're talking from a legal standpoint. When you're looking at a tax versus a user fee is designed to defray the costs of a regular activity or a government service, something very specific. Tax, on the other hand, is designed to raise general revenue that has the whole umbrella of local government functions. A user fee has to be proportionate to the necessary costs of service, basically, the supervision of the regulatory activity that's taking place, whereas that's not the case with a tax. It's designed to raise general revenue that can be used for anything. A true user fee has to be proportionate to the necessary costs of the service, which places that reasonable threshold and limit on how much the city is going to charge for these services for the staff review, whereas that's not the case with a tax. The taxes are not voluntary, they're imposed. A user fee, now I know that somebody may not want to pay a user fee, but they're paying that user fee to engage in the activity that they want to enter in. So those are some of the differences. Now, technically, this is not a license either. DBPR is the only one that can issue licenses, but what cities can do is they can require registration. So all fees are tagged to registration, not particular licensure. There is a distinguish, colloquially, there may not be a difference, but from a legal perspective, huge difference. So just want to set that out from the very beginning. What this new ordinance does is it encapsulates everything that council addressed in the previous meetings. Everything has been addressed. When we take a look at it and what's different, we can look at the whereas clauses. We'll see some new information regarding fire inspections within there and what specifically owners are going to have to follow. And I'll touch a little bit on that and when we get to fire inspections. There's also some information that is touching on census data, so we can see what the typical household in Dunnellon looks like versus what the typical vacation rental business, the vacation rental operation looks like. So some of this has been added. Just a few tweaks here and there, some mentions of some of the state regulations, just some things to make owners aware, if they do read the whereas clauses, of some of the requirements they do have to follow under state law, human trafficking, so forth. Since that has been removed, the request from council was to at least put that in there so that they're put on notice. So that's all included in the whereas clauses. Some of the big changes here, and I'll discuss the dates that we're looking for as well once we finish going through the ordinance, just from a high elevation here. On the inspections, I think that is an area where there's been a lot of confusion, so it's one area that I'll touch on and spend just a couple of minutes on. I don't think I'm going to spend more than 5 or 6 minutes talking about this whole thing. So just a couple of minutes with the fire prevention. When we look at 509, which is essentially the statutory preemption, the limitation on what cities can do with vacation rentals, one of the things that the legislature has preserved or put back in 2014, was specifically stating that local governments can conduct building and fire inspections. And they set that not only just fire inspections, and they reference the Florida Fire Code, they also reference 633-206, which is another statute, Florida statute. And in that statute, DBPR is responsible for setting minimum fire safety standards for vacation rentals. In other words, transient public lodging establishments. Covers more than just vacation rentals, but vacation rentals are under that umbrella. That has been set forth in Florida Administrative Code. So when we're talking about following the fire code, we have to use that language in the ordinance. We have to use it because that is what cities are empowered to actually use and what cities must use. So that has to be said. What will, I think, remember this ordinance, of course, and I think it's important for the public to understand, this ordinance sets a framework for things that are going to be filled in with city policy. And one of the things that I would expect will be part of what staff does is when folks come in for their registration, they're going to get that information or a copy of that portion of the administrative code that they have to follow, that the fire marshal is going to be checking for, because the fire marshal checks for that and they check for the fire code. To say something else, we would have an issue because it wouldn't encapsulate what they're actually taking a look at. How the inspections will work, one thing that's very important, the way that this ordinance is set up and whether the language is tweaked or not, and I'll address that too. Registrations and inspections, while they're related, are two separate animals. So the idea is, when somebody comes in for a registration, they're going to come in and provide the city with some work to take a look at, all the documents that are required. What the city will say, and of course this will be set by policy, is, all right, great, we now have your registration, we have enough information to give you your registration number. The registration number is given to the vacation rental owner. Vacation rental owner, now you're registered. Now remember, you do have to get a fire inspection. What's a reasonable amount of time? 90, 120 days, maybe more. Probably right around that time. So you need to call, set up your fire inspection, and then send it back to us. We need to see the proof and that the inspection has been passed. If that doesn't happen within that time that the city sets administratively via policy, not by this ordinance, then the city has the ability, per the ordinance, it will retain the ability to send out a notice and say, hey, listen, you do need to get registered. You have 20 days or whatever time council sets to go ahead. The city would have to coordinate with the county, make sure that the county's ready to go, and basically set that period, and if they don't come in from there, that's where they start getting into trouble. So owners will not be able to head with a October 1st deadline, trying to rush to get in to get a fire inspection prior to registration. They're going to have lots of time to set things up. You can't be too specific on the dates because the city, while it contracts with Marion County, doesn't control the county, doesn't control their schedules. So the whole idea is to allow the vacation rental owner to operate and to have plenty of time to go in and get their fire inspection completed and get it back to the city. And so the city will be able to work with the owner on that. Some of the language in the ordinance is set up for the county essentially contacting the vacation rental owner. As I've said, I've had some conversations with different council members. I can't go out and just call the county and talk to them without going through their attorneys. So apparently, if it's set up so the vacation rental owner needs to call, what we see is language, and this language actually has been litigated. Some simple language as an example from St. Augustine. At the time of registering a vacation rental and thereafter annually, the applicant shall be required to allow reasonable access to the property by city officials for an inspection of the FFPC, Florida Prevention Prior Code, and the Life Safety Code, as amended, adopted by the State Fire Marshal from time to time. That's been litigated. Essentially, that's what we're going after. St. Augustine, it doesn't mean that when you go in for that registration that you have to get that fire inspection right at that time. It just means you have to enter that, into that queue to essentially get your inspection administratively set up within that reasonable amount of time. And that seems to be working well for them. So that's how, fire inspections work. I think the language, after this meeting, if council directs it, we can tweak that a little bit to account for how Marion County operates. And it's very general language that takes care of it. Some of the other changes,
Andrew, I'm sorry, while we're on inspections, I have a question. In that section 6A, where it says the inspection fee shall be set by resolution of the city council, but that's set by the county. They would pay whatever the county's fee is, right?
Exactly. So the city would just be adopting what the county, has. And we might take that out, but that's how the city's code is already set up, that the city has to set the fees. Ultimately, this is the city's ordinance. Ultimately, when somebody registers, they're following city requirements. So even if the fee is paid to Orange County, the city still has to adopt it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all of that would be saying.
And then in paragraph B there, appointments for annual inspections to verify compliance with the code shall be made by the city. So the way that reads, because you just said that it would be up to the STR owner to contact them,
yes,
the county. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand how this is laid out, how it will work.
That would be the part I think that council directs we can change prior to now in the next council meeting.
Okay.
Next council meeting being next week. And just adopting something, or I shouldn't say adopting, but amending it to read similarly to what I just read from St. Augustine.
Right.
Now, the lines would continue on regarding the 20 days and so forth. If somebody didn't go out and get registered, if they just missed it somehow, the law is not designed to, or the rules would not be designed in any way to make them fail. It's really to enable short-term rental owners to have that time to get it
Right.
completed.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to be involved in having to make their appointments for them and schedule their inspections and
No.
go back and forth. That's
All that staff would be responsible for is checking, if it's, like I said, I'm using that 90, 120 days, let's say 120 days, somewhere at the end, is just going back and checking and seeing who has had their inspections completed. And then if one or two, missed it, just contacting and saying, well, you need to get inspected, what's going on? And then if it's not happening, sending out that notice, hey, now you have a deadline. Now you have a deadline that you have to get it done. That's just how it would work. So know that the city would not be part of the coordination process. If anything, I think the county would just be sending information to the city, and staff would be reviewing that at whatever point in time was appropriate to review it.
okay. Thank you.
Very welcome. There's been a lot of sections, all have been removed regarding personal information and so forth, the council has requested. And all of the required postings have been changed to conform to council's requests. We've addressed within this ordinance impermissible rentals. That's a new section. And it's been made very, very clear, instead of calling it vesting, there's an exemption for pre-existing contracts, making it very clear that this ordinance only applies and only requires vacation rental owners to register who, after the effective date of the ordinance, will be moving forward with new bookings. So under no circumstances does this ordinance affect any old bookings whatsoever. And when I say old, that's bookings made prior to the effective date of the ordinance, whenever it becomes effective. What I think what we'll be needing from council are just really 2 dates when it comes to the dates. We would need to just have an affirmation if this is going to run with the fiscal year, once it's up and established. I think the first year would probably be a different deadline.
Sure.
But is this something that's going to run October 1st typically? And that's why that one is listed as October 1st, because that was part of the initial discussions. So I left that date in. What we would be looking for from council is just, like I said, confirmation of that. If October 1st is what you want for future ones. And then an effective date of when this ordinance is going to become effective. And that is floating too, can be. As you all know, we've discussed a couple of communities and touched on different aspects of communities that have implemented these. And Marco Island, for instance, has stopped theirs. Now their ordinance, of course, much, much more restrictive than what's in front of the council here in this ordinance.
Sure.
But they decided to put it on pause for a bit. They simply adopted a resolution and said, well, while there is an effective date, we're not going to start enforcing it until this date. So there may be portions of this ordinance, for instance, if January 15th, January 30th, January 1st is selected as the effective date. As we get closer and as the city gets ready to start, having this ordinance, administering the ordinance, I think is the best word for it, as the city's moving forward to administering the ordinance, there may be portions of it the city wants to implement and others just saying, let's wait until 2024. Maybe, maybe not. And that's something the city has the option on. Once the ordinance becomes effective, the entire ordinance will be effective, but the city can simply adopt a resolution or a directive, put it up on the website, letting vacation rental owners know, you don't have to comply with the inspection until this date, or this part of the ordinance will be implemented, but you don't have to worry about paying this until this date. So that is something that, we'll see how things go as that time approaches, and you all have flexibility in administering and enforcing the ordinance there. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Y'all have any questions? Go ahead, Julianne.
No, go ahead, I'm thinking.
Andrew, the way I look at this, I want to get this in the public's hands so they understand and clearly, and if you haven't seen this, if you go to the agenda for tonight's meeting, it's attached, what we're talking about. For anybody that hasn't pulled it down and read it, it's went from 14 pages to 13 pages based on all the changes we made. But I would hope that we start the fiscal year October 1 with this being passed. Now, not effective, just passed. Personally, there's a lot that's got to get done here. Like I said, this whole fire inspection thing is kind of a mess. I do plan to get a hold of the Marion County Commission and find out why we hadn't been getting these. But anyway, we'll follow up on that. I almost think we need 4 to 6 months before we have an effective date. And if we start October, if we go 4 months, that'd be February. If we go 6 months, that'd be March, if I'm thinking right, into March.
That makes sense to me. I think the absolute earliest that would make sense would be mid-January, but looking at 4 months and beyond, February and March
Plus, again, I want y'all folks out there to understand, if we get into this and we say, all right, we want to use 4 months, and we get to January 1st or in the middle of January and realize, wait a minute, we're not going to be ready to enforce this. I think we could suspend it. Kind of like, I know this town you're talking about because I read their whole deal and all they went through, and they kept extending it, extending it, extending it. Finally, it did go effective. But again, I want the short-term rental people to understand, we're not going to put you in a bind to where you can't answer these questions and do what's required without having adequate time to get it done. So even though, yeah, we're going to pass it, again, that doesn't mean anything that you sign up after October is when this goes into effect. That if you have leases up to whenever this 4 to 6 months is, then those are grandfathered in, is the way I put it. But I think we need to give at least 4 to 6 months, and as we're getting into that, if we get it done, great. If we can't, I think we need to consider possibly extending it further. But I want to get it done, and I don't want to have it, or we're going to hold it up until we get the whole thing figured out. I don't want to. If we're all comfortable with this, I'd like to see us get it done. And then work on the effective date to where we can all get comfortable that, again, the city's going to get it done. We're going to answer all the questions, get everything put in place, and then the short-term rental people have got plenty of time to comply with it and get everything done they need to get done. And I think it's going to take 4 to 6 months. I just did, the way I look at this.
If that's the case, I think a couple dates just to put out there. It's tagged to a fiscal year that runs October 1st to September 30th. 6 months is April 1st.
Right.
So that puts it halfway through the fiscal year.
Maybe that's what we do.
So that's one date. March 1st is 5 months.
Right.
And that's past all the holidays and so forth that, obviously that would be January 1st, mid-January would probably be difficult for, I think, a lot of people to comply when they're going to have guests and just kind of craziness that comes with
I don't want to
holidays.
do January. No, that's too hard. Too many holidays. And it's going to affect us here, trying to get everything done.
I think March 1st is a good date.
March 1st? Okay, I was going to do April.
April 1st.
Yeah.
April 1st.
But again, I think as we're working through this, if we find that, we got it finished in March or April, we'll still stick with April. But I personally, looking at this, looking at all the hurdles we got to get through to organize how we're going to account for this and keep up with it, with the staff we've got here, I don't want to overwhelm them, but I want to get it done. And I want to put a hard deadline in there, and if we don't make it, we'll just extend it.
I think April 1st is fair enough.
Okay. All right. So I'd say, and again, I think having it tied in the future to October 1 makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's the time, every year, October 1, you got to get this done. Okay. I know one other thing that's in here is this annual cost. And again, I think we have to, until we know exactly how many short-term rentals we have and what the cost of administering this is going to be, I think we have to start out with something pretty reasonable and then just a year from now figure out, did we got way more, we got way less, and go from there. But I would suggest a fee, and again, this is based on what other cities are charging, about $150 a year.
$150 matches exactly what was proposed in the state legislation this session.
That's the other thing I remember.
$150 per rental, and then $200 if somebody has $200 for if someone has between 2 and 25, $200 for all of them, and that's what they said. And maybe the ordinance at this time, I don't know if that's something that council has, but that's just what the state statute was. $150 and $200 limitations.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable number. And then again, if we find out we got a lot more, then it may come down. If we find out we don't have as many, but I think we're going to have somewhere between 25 and 50 in the city. And this is all done. And I think, to me, if it's 50, $150, you know, what is that, 6,500 bucks? So it's, I think that's enough charge to get this done.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if the ordinance is going to become effective October 1st, are you requiring registration as of October 1st or April 1st?
April.
And then what happens 6 months through the year if the ordinance says you have to renew in October every year?
I can touch on that. So there's a couple different dates here. The ordinance would be adopted by October 1st. So that's based on an adoption sometime in September. It has to go through planning for comprehensive plan consistency, and of course, it's 2 readings. So that's adoption. The effective date of the ordinance is April 1st. So that means none of the law, nothing is applicable at all. No registration or anything, not until April. Now, if it's $150 for registration, it makes sense to prorate that for 6 months. So cut it in half. $75 for the first year, $150 thereafter would be a logical approach to it.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
What I said is, which the whole thing, or just
Just the last
fees?
2 statements about.
With the fees, if council's considering a fee based on what staff needs to do and, you know, the obligations to the city of $150 per short-term rental, if the ordinance does not become effective until April 1st, that's 6 months left, 6 months right in the middle of fiscal. It just makes sense to cut the fee in half for the first year and prorate it. So it would only be $75.
Okay.
So it's a $150 annual fee, but he's only registering the first time for 6 months. So why charge $150?
My question is, we haven't tallied up anything yet as far as expenses, so I don't know how we're coming up with a $150 fee right now.
We'd have to make
Number one,
sure-
we don't know how many people our short-term rentals are going to be registering the Marion County Tax Collector. And secondly, we haven't even begun to look at what it's going to cost in terms of clerical work and so on. So I'm not sure. I mean, I would love this council to set that fee at $150, but what if? What if the fees, the cost of administration implementation starts to rise, then what are we going to do?
Well, I think then we have to evaluate, is there any way to reduce those costs? And if there's not, then we would have to pass that on. But honestly, I think, Mandy and I have talked about this a little bit, you know, as far as tracking this, we got 25 people. I think you could build an Excel spreadsheet that could track, you know, the name, address, did they fill this out, did they fill that out, just fill out a spreadsheet, and then just roll it from year to year. And as people come in and register that we don't have, I can't imagine this taking a tremendous amount of time. I really can't. I mean, I'm not the greatest guy with an Excel spreadsheet. I used to build them all the time, so I don't see this as being terrible. Now, if we wake up tomorrow and we have 150, of course, then you get, or 100, well, then you get $150 times 100. So then we're dealing with more money, but we got people. I don't think we'll get to that. I really, once it's set up year after year after year, only additions and subtractions are going to be hard to keep up with. I really don't think it's going to be that hard. I really just don't.
And Councilwoman, my apologies, I didn't mean to talk over you for a moment there. You know, in a way, I think it's an important conversation to have. It's a little bit ahead of the game because any fee would be adopted by a resolution. So that won't be part of this ordinance. There's still a little bit of analysis that will have to go into it. Is $150, I think, sounds reasonable. It's what the state says is reasonable. Just kind of judging by ballpark and talking to staff, of somebody taking the time to look at it, do the evaluations, follow up with Orange County. It sounds like it's right in that ballpark. You know, it sounds like they did their homework and that's why they came up with that number. So it sounds reasonable, but the city will still have to go back and, you know, check that and make sure that's what, you know, the city's really looking at it before it's adopted by resolution, which comes later, sometime between October 1st and the effective date of the ordinance. If that's April 1st, April 1st.
The other thing I can tell you, I've talked to a couple of folks in a number of cities as I've been researching this whole ordinance thing for months. Talked to a couple of folks that said, you know, they've written pamphlets on how to comply, they've done this and done that, and they'd be glad to share some of that information with us again, which I think would keep our costs down. Now, we'd have to take that and tailor it to what we need, but there are a lot of cities out there across Florida now that have adopted this, and they basically built the bridge, and they're willing to share it with us, or we'd have to tailor it to our ordinance, not theirs. But again, I don't believe we're looking at a tremendous cost going forward on any of this, unless, like I said, we find out we got a lot more, and then, of course, we're gonna make more money at $150 for each one, so we just have to see how it goes. And hopefully, we don't run into a big problem. I don't think we will.
Andrew explained, because I asked him, especially I had a question about on the inspection fee, and it was saying that the city would make the appointments and collect the fees, and now we have changed that, I believe. Okay, I think that's going to make a lot of people happy.
Right. And I don't see how we can handle that. The other thing I can tell you, when I actually talked to fire inspectors about what the cost would be to inspect a house, not a fire inspection, an inspection, I was told by our current inspectors it'd be about $100 to do a house inspection.
Right.
And it's, like I say, $40 to do a fire inspection plus $10 to look at a sketch that kind of told them where the exits were and that kind of junk. And a re-inspection is $40. So if it's 40 and then plus the cost of the drawing, that's 50, and you gotta have it inspected twice, that's $90. And then you get a building inspection, that's $100. So again, it's only $200. It's not an overwhelming number.
For each unit, right.
Right, for each unit. Now, if somebody's got a bunch of units, well, that's gonna add up.
I don't think that's what you said. I think you said it was that for one unit, then you said it was...
No, that's our fee. Our fee can't be more than a certain amount, but by inspection, it's by unit.
Oh, okay, yeah, for those.
And by unit, a dwelling unit is the entire structure, so a unit is a home. Per the state statute. And the city is not charging the building inspections, and a building inspection would only come up if there's another improvement made to the actual structure, because the city will only, per this ordinance, be charging fire. Now, if, you know, somebody adds on or does an addition, that'll still go through your typical building inspection checks, and they'll pay that $100 fee or whatever it is for each inspection they need.
Okay. And you're right, Andrew, I got ahead of myself on the fee, because that's a separate item. It's not even in here. I'm sorry about that. Okay? Any questions? Any other questions? We good? Are we good on having it, you know, adopted October, effective April of next year? That seem reasonable? 6 months?
Sounds very reasonable.
Okay. And again, I want y'all to know, if we get into a bind and if we're just not ready, we can always defer that. Because I've seen that done. I know in one town they deferred it over a year and a half. But anyway, that's something we do. You good? Okay. Are we through with? Go ahead.
Just some clear direction. As I'm taking it, and where it needs to go from here, as I understand, I will insert the dates for an April 1st effective date, tag everything in the ordinance to that. It'll run on the fiscal for renewals after the first year. I will modify the inspection language to match what was discussed. And yeah, those will be the two changes.
Okay.
Very good.
Just talking about timing, the way that planning falls in September, it's between your two meetings, according to the city calendar. So to adopt in September, in absence of a planning special meeting following, you know, sometime in August following the council meeting, you'd be looking probably at a first reading and then going to planning, which is, the city's done that before. It's not the typical way. Usually things go to planning first before first and second reading. But that would be fine. Or if there's a date in August that the planning commission reviews it, you know, after the council meeting, that's fine too. But you'd have your first reading and that first meeting in September, and your second one, I guess your budget final adoption, but you know, the final adoption will be.
We'll have budget meetings in September.
And you'd have that in September.
Brenda, y'all have a meeting in August yet?
No, their meeting is on the 22nd of this month. So planning could review it on the 22nd of August, and it could go to first reading on the 13th and final reading on the 27th.
Okay.
Oh,
Great. That
whatever, okay.
doesn't match my calendar, so I had a date off. Had them for the 15th.
Okay.
So that would be fine, because that comes
Yeah.
after the,
That'd be after the next
that'd be
meeting.
after the 16th, after the council meeting.
Right.
So it could be reviewed in August, and if there was some sort of issue, it could be looked at by the planning commission again in September.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved their meeting from the 15th to the 22nd this month. Because it's normally the third Tuesday, and they moved it to the 22nd. That's probably why. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we through with that now? All good? Andrew, you got what you need?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Item number 6, updating the credit card surcharge. And this was Jan.
Yes, sir. In fact, the next four items are mine. I just to give you a heads up. The city's been collecting credit cards for a number of years now, and we just started trying to recover the cost.
Sure.
And pass that on within the past few years. I did an analysis, and I did it based on from October through June, and we have had to absorb approximately $260 worth of credit card fees. Fees come from our third party processor as well as the credit card companies.
Oh, yeah.
And we have no control over what they charge, and credit card companies, depending on the card, charge a different fee. So there's no way to even anticipate what our fees will be. We can only do an analysis from time to time.
Right.
And if we increase our fee 0.5% from 3.2% to 3.7%, as of June, we would still experience a shortfall, but it would be about $8. So I'm looking to request that. I will do another analysis, in a number of months. And the average fee that is passed on amongst the cities is between 4% and 5%. So our fee is relatively low, but it just, the more credit cards we take, the more fees we
Well,
incur.
and people gotten used to using credit cards.
Yes.
It's more convenient. I think it's been long enough that we've experienced a rate increase in 0.5%, I think. And it's not a huge number. Like I say, if we were going to 5 or 6%, I'd say, wait a minute, this is fine. But 3.7, I don't think there's a problem. All okay with that? Yeah. Okay. All right, I think we need to put this on the consent agenda.
It's got to be read for the
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. And don't put it on the consent agenda. Whatever. Okay, I was just trying to speed up our life. Let's see, number 6, what's that? Oh, that's right, here it is. Okay. Is the police here? I guess not. I've already signed this.
Yes, you have. And
I was gonna say, when I opened it up, read it, I was, wait a minute, I already signed it. Okay, there's an agreement of JAG, FDLE, Grant Ward. We were trying to get this done by a certain date, and I'm gonna say, I think I've already signed it.
you have, and this is being brought forward to ratify your signature. It was a grant that the police department found out that initially they applied for it too late, so they didn't think it was awarded. In researching it, there was additional money, so FDLE said, we want to give it to you, so they sent us an agreement. It is for 5 laptops. There is no city match. It's in the amount of $8,161, and we're just asking for the council to ratify the mayor's signature.
We got a grant, and the laptops are free, and I've already signed it, it's $8,000, so I think we ought to consider ratifying that. Okay.
And that can go on consent.
All right. That's number 6. Or 7, I'm sorry, I'm behind.
Okay, and item number 8 is also a JAG grant. JAG stands for Justice Assistance Grant, and the police department is applying for this for 3 more laptop computers to just outfit the whole department. This is in the amount of $10,000. Again, it's 100% grant funded, and we're looking for, what happens is JAG distributes money to all of Marion County, and we're required to participate in a letter that Marion County has to submit to this program. And so they're asking basically for the mayor to sign. It's called a 51% letter, which details out the distribution of the monies and which municipality gets how much. So we're asking that you authorize the mayor to sign the 51% letter and then any subsequent grant agreement that will follow. This way we don't have to bring it back for execution because these are guaranteed.
Right.
So at least the police department's getting grants.
Yes,
Okay,
they deserve it.
all right.
Not the normal.
That one can, all right. That's something. All right. We through with that one? We all good? All right, number 9. Cooperative funding agreement between Southwest Florida Water Management District and the City of Dunnellon.
Mr. Mayor, this grant is a little more complicated. We
Yeah.
were awarded this grant several years ago. It was supposed to be a 3-year project. This is to map the city's stormwater assets, and there's a 50% match. SwiftMud really controls all this, so we don't see any grant revenue. We just pay the invoices that they submit to us to equate to our match. This project has stalled because of the, and Chad may be able to explain this better, but the Florida Peninsula LIDAR collected by the U.S. Geological Society, that goes into this program. It's basically going to be like a GIS mapping system that Chad will have access to. This will also keep us in compliance with stormwater requirements with DEP, and they're just asking us to execute an amendment to extend the time frame of this grant.
Okay.
And this is funded by the 1-cent sales tax. There's about $118,000 still owed on this, and I reserve that money each year to make sure that we do not spend it on anything else.
Good.
So you'll see $118,000 in every budget.
Okay.
Until it's spent.
Okay. And this has been extended through 26, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's it for me today.
All right. Number 10, letter supporting the state funding of acquiring Nine Island Cove property. Ms. Covich.
Yes, tell you how this all came about. It came about rather quickly. We were informed, all of us, we got an email from Terry with Marion County Commissioners, and it gave us council people through this email information about the annual Marion County Legislative Delegation meeting to be held September 13th, which is a Wednesday. And I took notice of that email, and what this is, it's a meeting of all of our local representatives, and they're listed on the top of this letter. And I thought and conferred with Senator Dennis Jones, who I think everybody but Rex knows rather well. And I asked Senator Jones, would this not be an opportune time to go ahead and look at this Nine Island Cove grant request through Florida Forever Community Trust? We are already on the list, but we have a lower placement. And again, like Jan has said, because we're a small city, they tend to push us down. And Senator Jones responded to me immediately saying, yes, this is an opportunity for the city of Dunnellon and RRC, Rainbow River Conservation, to speak to all of our state representatives and let them know about this grant, because most likely they do not. And also Senator Dennis Jones says that the opportunity is ripe because it's $370 million sitting out there right now for land conservation. Jim Gissy just got $1.4 million right here across the river in Citrus Springs, next to what is that called? we used to call it Bear's Head Hammock, now it's called something else. They just got $1 million, $1.2 million to buy a 100-acre parcel next door to them. So now they're looking at our area really closely. So Senator Jones, he said he will pick up the ball for us. Senator Jones said, Jan, you get the letter which states that council agrees to this is a new council, so it's this council that must now agree to the fact that if we are awarded this grant of, and I think we don't know what the figure is going to be yet, but it would purchase all 16 parcels. Of course, they send an appraiser and they deal with the broker. Okay, so we don't know, and we don't need to know because the state's going to write the check. What we need to do is assure the state of Florida, DEP, and Florida Forever Trust that this council sitting here now will at some point accept the property and the responsibilities of managing it. And I'd just like to say that that property is used as a park right now. I don't know how many of you have ventured over there, but people go, right here in town, they go over there to fish. The kids go with their fishing poles. They hike. They've made biking trails and so on. People that own the property right now don't care. You can't find a no trespassing sign out there. They are agreeable to the fact that residents of Dunnellon already have accepted this as public property. It's a very rare, I think, thing to happen, but again, it's probably very rare that these people, 8 owners, came together and they explicitly asked the broker, go to the city of Dunnellon, see if they would purchase these parcels as a park. It's unbuildable land. So that's where we stand right now. And if you've read the letter, I've just explained some of the attributes. If you've read the application, you understand what's going on. So it's just this council that needs to reiterate that, yes, if an appraiser comes, there's a done deal with the realtor who represents the property owners, and at some point we would take over management. And I'm thinking this management is not something that has to be immediate, even if we get the property. There is nothing out there that demands attention. And we can turn me loose, turn our RRC loose, we will find grant money, foundation money, and so on, and it will be a slow process, but that's where we stand with this.
So I can start discussion. When I started to get involved in city things 4 or 5 years ago, this was like top of my list. I was super excited about 9 Island Cove. And then, of course, being on the council has given me different perspectives and different views. I did review your letter. I hear what you're saying, that these people came together and said, oh, anybody on the community can use our land. So currently visited by neighborhood children and adults who walk the trails and crisscross the property. I guess I just want to clarify that it really is trespassing and not a park. So I hear that you're sort of saying in an anecdotal manner, but to write this in the letter, essentially it's trespassing. So,
We can amend this, you want to cross that out, no problem.
Yeah, I'm just giving some feedback. So the areas of potential for a much requested dog park, and I have heard a lot of residents come here and ask about dog parks. I guess one of the things that I would like this council to consider, because we have all along, is to really understand before we invite new projects and things, to really understand what we're getting into. We just sat at a meeting where we're struggling to manage and we're struggling to make our financial commitments to Blue Run Park. So while I'm all about the Florida Forever and I'm all about the conservation of this land, I'm a little bit hoping that we do our due diligence, because there was a maybe called like a prospectus that we had filled out that said what we would contribute to this. And from this seat and this vantage point, I've been thinking of Dunnellon a little bit like all the residents of Dunnellon, the 1,900 or 2,000 of us, are all carrying about thousands of visitors on our backs, right? So we're paying for the roads, and we're trying to build up the police and pay for that, and we're trying to figure out how we're gonna keep up with Blue Run Park and keep the swimming holes safe. And more visitors are on the back of the taxpayer, trying to figure out how to make these things happen. So I really support the conservation of 9 Island Cove. I ask that we're real careful what we get the taxpayers into, because there is a document attached to this that says that we are going to take responsibility, and I think that's the end of your letter. It says, Dunnellon will be agreeable to take on the management of 9 Island Cove. And it makes me a little bit fearful, because we're having trouble taking on the care of City Hall and the care of our streets and the care of our town.
But
So,
like I said before, we can let that property sit as is. Just let it lay there. And at some point down the road, and you know, I'm going to serve 2.5 more years. It might be the next council that decides, but I know whether I'm sitting on council or not. I've already done my homework, and I know that Southwest Florida Water Management and FWC offers grants to help us develop that property. The National Park Service has a program in which they literally will send people, engineers here, and look at roads, whatever, and help us get the grants that would make any improvements.
and last thing I'll say, and I'll give them a chance to speak. I'm very much in favor of preserving the land. Grants have not been, even when we're sure there's this shoe-in grant and we can get it and it's for sure, it doesn't come through. So let's just be careful what kind of responsibility we're taking on, because again, I feel like the taxpayers can hardly manage what we're already doing. Thank you.
Rex, you live right there. What do you think?
I do live right there. And I do have a little bit of experience with this, of what happens when, and I want to agree with everything you said, and yes, I would love to see the park. My only concern, or one of my concerns is, and this is what we saw in Palmetto Bay, is not today, but 3 or 4 years down the line, there'll be another council. It won't be us. A developer looks at that land, rules change, and says, I want that land, because he finds out there is something he can do. And this is what they did in Palmetto Bay. They then put 3 people up to get on our village council that were just basically their shills, and they wanted to build something. And that was all they were on there for, and we had 300 people in a room saying we don't want it, and the vote was 5 to nothing. So is this going to put us in a position where a developer could come in 5 years and say, I want that land because it's a park, and have some people start complaining about the cost of the park? Okay, well then let's change it to this, and then he buys it. So we've lost what we really intended to get, and that's my concern. Yes, there is a cost for keeping up the park. It's going to, as they said in Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. We've already seen an excess of people on the river. They'll say, okay, well, here's another access to the river. Are we going to have to provide the roads for it? And like you said, grants are not right. And so, yes, I am in favor. I would like to see an area like this close to Dunnellon not be 6-story apartment buildings with 300 people in each of them. But we do have a lot of things to consider, and I do appreciate the fact that you brought it up, but this is what could potentially happen down the road.
Just want to point something out for council, something I'm aware of because of some of the business in the past. There is a charter provision that states that no city parks, beaches, recreation areas, etc., shall be disposed without a referendum. So if it becomes city property and so forth, it stays city property unless there's a referendum vote within the city to alienate that property.
Good.
And Swiftmud already says they will not give building permits, which is exactly why these 8 owners said, we want no more part of it. And it's only the tax assessment is $142,000 on all these properties. I think the appraisal's going to come in ballpark lows. People really want to get loose of these properties that are unbuildable. Whatever we decide, I know there's gonna be a lot of people disappointed. I don't know what city, the state of Florida, would not take on 49 acres of green space at this moment. Tell me what city wouldn't take on 49 acres? And again, we can just sit on. And I'll tell you, we can't be playing around with this. This meeting is September 13th. Bill Vibbert is going to go, and Senator Jones are going to make a preservation. That is the plan. And RRC is going to work hard to get funding. And I'll tell you what, I know what their bankroll is. There are individual people right now, I'm not going to give their names, who have already said they will commit money, their own money, to help with any enhancements. That's how much they think of this. And I know it all sounds pretty picture, and pretty pictures don't always become reality, but this place is special. And again, there's the historical significance.
I don't think anybody's arguing with that, Jan, and I think, I'm very grateful to the RRC and what they do, and I know they've been partners in the other park, and I'm not trying to, suggest in any way that it's that we don't support the Florida Forever. I'm just trying to bring up the financial part of it,
right?
Because every project that we do, we're
Right.
trying to look at from a financial perspective.
We have to make a decision. Because if you decide not to send this letter, if you all say you're going to sign this letter, it's over. We pulled the plug on that request for grant money to buy that property. This is 2024 is it. The money is here now, and between now and our next meeting, if you would like to get with Senator Jones and talk to him about that. He said, the money is there. I will personally go to Tallahassee. And he knows the guy Bergeron, who's now in charge of the Conservation Committee. He says, I'll get it done. If you decide to pull the plug on it between now and our next meeting, Senator Jones ain't going to go back up there and pull rope strings for the city of Dunnellon. And again, we're little, we don't get a lot of attention. It's either now or it ain't going to happen.
Okay, can I comment?
I'm sorry?
Can I comment?
Of course.
Okay. When the 9 Island came up a number of years ago, I wasn't sitting here. I was sitting out there. I got with a group of folks, and we all put money in trying to convince that council to buy 9 Island. I was one of the investors with Paul Marafino, a few folks, okay? We put some money in and we pushed hard to get this done. And at the time, like Julianne, I felt like it was a no-brainer. But I'm going to tell you some things I remember about this deal. First of all, we got to get on this list, and we did. The way it was presented to everybody was we get on the list, and that just means you're on the list. And we couldn't even get that council to put it on the list, okay? But eventually, it got put on the list,
With
okay?
the new council, right?
Right. The new council after that one agreed to put it on the list, which I'm glad they did. Because what it told me was, number one, we agreed to put it on the list, but we did not bind the city into anything, okay? It was just, we're on the list. If we get approved, then it becomes something we got to deal with. The other thing I remember was the funding of this at that time was the city had to come up with 10% of whatever the purchase price of all this property was. And there was no real number other than the fact it could be for all 49 acres, $1 million, and then we'd owe $100,000. I don't think we've ever reserved anything like this, okay, that I remember. But anyway, because we didn't have to. It was like, okay, we're going to put it on the list. If the state ever approves it, then we can either say, no, we don't want it, or we can say, okay, we want it, but then we got to come up with whatever this 10% is. Now, I don't know if this grant you're talking about still got this 10% cost.
Okay, actually, we had a resolution to that.
Okay.
That there are 8 acres that can be developed. That is up on the High Park, alongside the middle school.
Right.
Okay, and the plan was Once the city gets the property, we have the right to sell that property.
Sure.
And that was our discussion and solution to that, that we
But-
could probably get 30,000 an acre or whatever, I don't know what the going price is
And
now.
then you have to do that.
30,000 times 8 would be 240,000.
But as Andrew discussed, you have to put it to referendum to sell those.
And of course
acres.
that, yes, we understand that, correct.
So
Of
again,
course.
what I'm getting to is there is a cost based on what the program was when we got it on there. I don't know if that 10% cost is still out there.
We could find out.
Well, we need to. That's,
Absolutely.
again, I go where Julianne was going is,
We have
before we
10
commit to doing it, and again, hell, I put money in the deal the first time trying to get the city to do it, so I'm not against it.
Right.
It's just, I want to know, what are we walking into? Okay, if it gets approved, state comes up with the money, how much do we got to put up? Is it still 10%? And if it is, how do we afford it? The next thing that I thought of, and it was brought up at the last time this got discussed, is that 49 acres, we collect property tax on. When the city owns it, we won't collect anything.
And again, it's assessed that, the county assessment is 142,000 and,
Oh, that's the county?
yeah.
Okay. So ours would be a lot less than that. Okay. The concern was, how much are we giving up? And again, Chad and I have been talking, and that I think the city personally owns too much property that we don't fund anything with. Now saying that, the park is something different, okay, to me. Owning a lot in Rainbow, or excuse me, Dunnellon Heights is one thing. Owning 49 acres as a park is something else. But again, before I want to sign this, I want to like get a ballpark. Don't have to be exact. What are we committed to? Okay. Again, it's kind of like, and I hate to bring this up because it's a sore subject for me. Previous councils, many moons ago, got involved with Blue Run Park. Great idea, okay? And at the time, we committed to fund a bathroom. And that original commitment was $25,000. Today, it's $210,000 and growing. And that's what I don't want this to be. And I agree. We don't do anything with it, that's great. But I don't want to just walk into this and say, all right, they're going to buy it, we got to come up 10% fine. Well, what else we got to do? You know, these are the kind of things, I would like to know those answers. I'm all for moving forward, but I want to get a ballpark, what's the city going to commit to, that we don't end up like the bathroom, although we won't have a bathroom, committing to something that we thought was 25,000 and all of a sudden it's 10 times that number. Okay, but if you could find that out,
Oh, absolutely.
and that would be great to know, because I want to make sure if we're all comfortable with the commitment, then I'm for it, because I think it'd be, again, the way I looked at it before was we would put a park on one end of the town, and we got Blue Run on the other end, and you could actually put somebody in the river at Blue Run Park and have them get out at 9 hours. I mean, it's just that simple. But anyway, I'd like to know, what do we commit to? But other than that, okay.
Mayor,
Yeah,
can I give you Tim's comment?
yes.
One comment was we should understand the issues and costs of Blue Run Park before taking on more of the same. And also pointing to the management prospectus that was submitted along with the application to have it put on the list.
Mhm.
There were a number of things in here that puts the burden on the city to do some things, and I just wanted to point that out. In the first paragraph, it says the city of Dunnellon will develop trails, benches, a river boardwalk, picnic pavilion, and a parking area to allow access to the park. Then it says, where was that at? Timetable for implementing the intended use of the property would begin as soon as it's acquired. The first phase will be to extend sidewalks and modify entrance into the park to develop woodland trails next to the cones. Other improvements, including a boardwalk, pavilion, benches, and historic kiosks will evolve over a 5-year period as funds are available. And then there was another one that went out. Currently, there's no infrastructure on the property other than 2 lime rock roads and underground sewer lines. Dunnellon Police will periodically patrol the park. Dunnellon Public Services staff will do routine maintenance on the park and hire contractors on occasion for larger projects. Marion County Fire Rescue will continue to provide emergency services. That's not on the city. Then there was one more. The city of Dunnellon will assume responsibility for managing the park utilizing existing staff. City personnel will maintain the park features and facilities that the Public Services Department will monitor and conduct natural resource activities. So we're held to what was submitted in that management perspective. There's already a lot that's been pointed out there that will be the city's responsibility.
And those are some of the same things that are outlined for Blue Run Park that currently I guess next month we're going to talk about it, but a lot of those things aren't in place there. And it's been, the bathroom was 5 or 10 years out, and now we're way past that. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of responsibility.
And this was just a summary management prospectus that went along just with trying to get it on the list. I can just imagine you're going to have something similar to what you have with Blue Run Park, because the state's going to require you to develop a management plan, and you know how in-depth the management plan is for Blue Run Park.
Can we get a summary of what you just read?
Yes.
Could you send that out to all of us?
I certainly will.
Again, that's exactly what I was worried about. If it's, like you're saying, if we can just own the property and not do anything with it, that's one thing. But if it
That's
tells
not
us
what
in 5 years, we got to do X, Y, Z.
So far. So far, we've initiated through the application.
Right.
That we would do a whole lot of things within the next 5 years.
And Tim and I, he just wanted you to make sure that everybody was aware of what was already in that management perspective.
Okay, did you get that to us? And I'll just read it before the
Yes.
next meeting Wednesday? Because again, I just have, we're all experiencing Blue Run Park right now in the bathroom situation there, and I think Blue Run Park's wonderful. Don't read anything into this. But we found out that things are costing a lot more than we originally thought in 2008. And again, I want to buy this, I'd love to have it, but what is it going to cost us in the end, and how soon do those costs start reeling in? That's what bothers me.
And do we have the staff to
Oh, yeah.
maintain more property?
If we could just leave it out there like it is with those trails and roads, and I've ridden my bike on the roads, I walk my dog out there, it's a great park.
Yeah, it's.
But, if we got to all of a sudden start putting benches and this, that, and the other, wait a minute, what do we, and put in a parking lot for everybody to park on?
Right, and then we're faced even more with all the issues in the historic district that we've talked about. So now we've brought in a lot more people, but we don't have the parking, and they don't. So, we can keep bringing more people in, but if we're not fixing our infrastructure, and if the 2,000 people who live here can't afford to fix the place up enough to bring in more and more and more visitors, we're going to have to take another look.
Right. Okay, get that to us, and let's everybody try to get that reviewed before the next meeting.
And if you haven't taken a walk in there yet, and they mentioned roadways and trails, the roadways exist, the trails exist.
They're just dirt.
So yes, a parking lot, definitely,
Right.
at some point. And again, there are grants out there that can help us. We can't just shove them off and say, oh, they're not. Anything environmental, outdoor recreation right now is hot. Foundations are hot on shining up their images by contributing.
Let's all read this, get prepared to discuss it next Wednesday night.
Sounds good.
And I'm all, again, I don't want anybody reading this. I think the 9 Islands is great. I want to know what are we committing to in the future, and how soon that commitment comes.
And if you have any edits to the letter, please send those to me so I can update that before Wednesday.
Okay, do that. All right. That gets that. Discussion of city clerk's evaluation format.
I'm going to have to pass on that again. I don't have it ready. I thought I would have
I was
something.
going to say, we sent you a form a while back, you were supposed to pick one.
I got three that I'm looking at and trying to figure out how.
Okay, we'll pass on that, good, that, get rid of that.
Get them together.
Discussion of Santa in the park.
Santa in the Park, that was something y'all had asked us to put on, at the last council meeting, because we had the allocation in the budget for that. I think it was the consensus of everyone that we might want to consider deferring that and not.
What did we do in the budget, do you remember?
$4,000.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. I
Okay.
kind of checked in with Kelly, and I know Kelly was working with others to look into, the last couple of years, there's been a Santa in the Park, and it was spearheaded by Georgina, who's no longer with us, and I think she was really excited about the planning of it. It went really well. However, I talked to Kelly and Mandy a little bit about considering scaling down this year and using the money that's in the budget for, I know that typically we like to put those decorations on the light posts, and we could talk about the budget that we have and looking into which companies could provide that service for us in the best manner, and then talking about how many of those we need so that we can tailor the decorations to the budget that we have. And I would propose, I know the chamber does the parade. I would propose not having Santa in the park and just sticking with the decorations and the parade this year, just for the fact that we're really facing a lot of budgetary constraints, and there will be the festivity of the parade. So that's my suggestion. Again, I ran it by Kelly, and she said there wasn't too much work being put into it yet, but that's my suggestion. I'm not quite sure if the chamber's doing anything else. Sometimes the chamber does other activities.
And that brings up something.
No,
Can you go to the chamber meeting?
Yeah, I planned on it. Tim
Okay.
called me.
Okay, good, because he called me and I can't.
He didn't call either one of y'all.
I was gonna say.
Well, no, only you called me or texted me and I said I can't do it, get ready to do it.
She didn't call anybody, I promise you.
All right, it got passed around. Okay, you do that. If you go to that meeting, should we ask them what they're planning to do other than the parade?
Well, I think it's important that we inform them of what we are or are not going to do, and then they can plan accordingly. If there's, I also talked to the city staff that if there's something we can help the chamber with,
That's what I'm getting at.
we can consider that.
Right.
And I'd also like the chamber, when it comes to Christmas, I bring it up every year, that I'd really like to see some proactive efforts on trash. There's always tons of trash and candy and flyers after the parade, and I'd really like to see a plan for trash cans or cleanup.
Sure.
Under our city ordinances about that.
Right.
Thanks
Okay.
for passing that along.
Yeah, just find out what they're planning to do and how we may coordinate with them if we didn't do Santa in the Park.
Okay.
Okay.
How many, just because I've never been to it, how many people, how long is it?
What, the parade?
No, the Santa in the Park, is it one night?
The Santa in the Park, yeah, it was one night, it was before the parade. The first year, one child showed up.
Okay.
The second year, many children showed up. But again, it was, it was an effort that was put on by the city. It was not well planned in advance.
Okay.
And the expense of it, was, in my opinion, significant.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Department head reports.
Okay, I have a few things. Okay, the first thing I'll mention is that we have, and this was a request by Vice Mayor Inskeep, that we consider the 2 lots in Dunnellon Heights, declaring them as surplus and selling those lots. If you all are agreeable to that, we can prepare a surplus resolution maybe in time for Wednesday. Andrew, what do you think? That shouldn't be too hard to do, right? So we can have a resolution to you by next Wednesday for your meeting to declare those as surplus, and then we can list them for sale.
I think that'd be good.
Okay.
I'd like to take a hard look at that list, and I remember you telling me about those lots out there.
Oh, Mandy, let me just ask you, are those located within the CRA? Or
No.
outside of the CRA boundaries? Okay.
I don't think so.
No, there's only one strip in Dunnellon Heights that's CRA, and I think it's frontage on 484.
Yeah, and those lots, I think, are back in there.
So everything on
They were
484
lots
is
that
involved.
we somehow tried to look back at the history. We got them through assessments.
Right.
Tax liens.
Tax liens,
Probably for
yeah.
the water lines that were originally installed.
Yeah. So we'll look and make sure, because there's a whole different process if they're in the CRA, there's a whole different.
Okay. Well, just make sure we get that right.
I don't believe it.
All right, so we'll do a surplus resolution for that. Another thing that Vice Mayor Inskeep, and I have been talking about that he would like to, for council to consider, is payment to employees in lieu of health insurance if they decline coverage in our plan. I reached out to some other cities and through my FACC group, and there are 4 cities responded to me. And City of Green Acres, they do $166.67 a month, which equates to $2,000 a year. Temple Terrace does $156 a month, which equates to $1,872. Largo, $100 per pay period, which equates to $2,600 a year, and the same as DeBerry. So the way they have their plans set up and what little bit of research I've done on it is, it seems that maybe the way this got started with some other cities or agencies is to help subsidize the cost of insurance coverage if you're covered by a spouse or some other plan.
Right.
But you have to be able to prove that you have other insurance. You can't just say, oh, I don't want coverage.
Right.
You have to be able to show, evidence that you have other coverage and what it costs. And so we can do this by resolution, by amending the personnel manual to provide for this. And it would be up to the council what you want to set that rate at. I know we have, I think, 2 employees right now who are covered by their spouse, on their spouse's insurance. So they don't take the city's insurance, which, could save us anywhere from $8,000 to $11,000 a year based on what we're looking at as far as rates right now. But Vice Mayor Inskeep wants to consider taking a portion of that money that we won't be spending on them and give it to them through payroll. And of course, they would be taxed on it just like any other.
So we need to be careful of that.
I've run it by our auditing firm, and the auditor said, yes, you can absolutely do it, but you have to, have a policy, and it has to be consistent throughout the city, applicable to everyone, and it has to be taxed. So I've done that homework. So we would just need to, at some point, if this is something council supports, is doing a resolution to amend the personnel manual to provide for this benefit.
I'm also going to need direction to put something like that in the budget, unless you want to,
Don't
kind of.
worry about it. Just leave it like we got it.
Okay.
I would be for it, especially now that you're telling me you've checked and there's a few cities doing this kind of stuff. And I would be careful that they need to have insurance from somewhere. And number 2, they need to understand whatever we give them is going to be subject to tax, which they may think it's just an extra $1,500, $2,000, and it's not. It's going to be after tax.
Right.
So I think if other cities are doing it, we ought to offer it to folks that have their own insurance somewhere else.
Now you just have to let us know an amount that you agree on. And if you want some time to think about that, we can leave that blank and fill it in on Wednesday. in the resolution, Andrew? Can we do that? Because it's just read by title, that would be in the details. So, yeah, I mean, and I can share this information that I found with you
Yeah.
all, if you want me
Share
to
that.
do that.
Try to get back with you on that.
And, so everybody's good with that? Okay. I got quotes on the City Hall carpet. I know I had laid a couple of samples down over here, but there was another carpet that I came across that, I'll actually pass this down. It's actually a better carpet. It's a nylon. The other one I had out here was a polyester, which it wasn't I don't know, I have become a carpet expert now. It's this one right here in the corner, right here, it's called nickel, and I'll let you pass that down, like you can touch it and feel it, but determined that that's a higher quality, better carpet, and it really wasn't more expensive. And the quotes that I got for all of City Hall, I won't go through all the details of all the quotes. I just did a summary for you. So that is Aladdin Commercial, which is a Mohawk brand nylon and Virostrand with ultraset matrix backing. And if you look at the bottom of that one, on the left, it shows you the back of it. On the far left side, it shows you the backing on the carpet. And it's a little bit higher quality than the sample that I had in here. I got 3 quotes, which includes the removal of the carpet, carpet glue and installation of the new carpet, and the content manipulation will be performed by city staff. And what I love about this carpet tile, because when we were talking about city public works having to come over and move all this furniture, with the carpet tile, we don't have to empty an office. We can move everything to one side, pull out the carpet, lay the tile, move everything over, and especially places like our server room, where you've got 100 wires going into the wall, and it would just be almost impossible to just pick that stuff up and move it out, where we can manipulate within the offices with the carpet tile. So I checked with Sunbiz. All 3 are registered with Sunbiz and Patriot Homes because they're a general contractor, is also licensed with DVPR. And Michael's Flooring also sent us over a certificate of insurance, and they were the lowest quote that we got at $14,156.01.
That's for everything. Now, the tile, we're not covering that, are we?
Just carpet.
Just
Just
carpet.
wherever you see carpet now is what will be replaced. So we had 32,000 in the budget for
I was
this.
gonna say, we got more than that in the budget.
We got 32 in the budget, but we can get it done for under 15.
I think we ought to go for it. And it's already in the budget, let's do it.
Yeah.
And get it done now.
Yeah.
This carpet's,
This carpet's 25 years old.
yeah, it should have been replaced a long time ago. Okay,
So can we put that on the consent agenda?
yes, ma'am.
To go ahead and move forward with Michael's floor covering for the carpet installation.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Next thing is, okay, I emailed you all today about Grubbs had reached out, and because our contract for disaster recovery and debris removal services is up this month, so we need to renew with them. They sent us a 1-year extension. So that prompted me to turn around and reach out to Wood Resource Recovery because they are our primary contractor. And they said they were ready to extend theirs too for another 5 years. So if y'all are good with that, I can work on getting those documents to you all for approval on Wednesday.
But the first one's 1 year. and
I don't know why Grubbs just said a year. If we want to do a year-to-year thing, we were locked in for 5 years.
Yeah.
And we haven't had any issues with either one of these companies. They are the most prominent companies in this area. And when we did that RFP back in 2018, because when we have a really, really bad, like statewide disaster, if our primary contractor is spread too thin and can't get to us, then we have a backup. And I've worked with both of them. Jan's worked with both of them over the years doing FEMA reimbursement, and they've been really great to work with.
Do both these contracts say they can be extended upon,
Yes.
Okay, because we have to be really careful of FEMA requirements with procurement.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But we'll just have to figure out which way we want to go. If we want to do 1-year extensions or a 5-year.
I'd rather get them commit to 5 with inflation. If they'll commit.
I'll find out. Wood
See?
Resource said they would. They sent a
Because-
letter saying they wanted to extend it for another 5 years.
I would definitely do that. And if, I would ask them if they would do 5, and if they may raise the rate, and that may be the problem, but then do whatever you can do to get it done. We gotta get this done, because we don't want to be without it, if a hurricane hits here.
Right. And I'll go back and verify that, Jan, but it seems like I did, when I went and looked at the term in the last in the last contract, I think it said it could be renewed.
Okay.
But I will definitely verify that. Andrew, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, and I'll address it part in my comments, but part of the new state legislation, because of the confusion that happened with some of the hurricanes and the debris removal and some of the cities, not following proper procurement requirements, there is a requirement that Disaster Management State Agency posts on its website a model debris removal contract for the benefit of local governments. I don't know if it's been posted yet, but the law became effective July 1st, and I can check for you on that, because we could always modify the terms possibly and put it into that contract. But I do know that those contracts, if I recall correctly, those were all bid out according
They
to...
have to be.
Yeah, they were bid in 2018.
Right, after, and they were not, we rebid after, because the city had piggybacked for a while. Right, okay, I'll check on that and get with you on that.
Yeah, we got out of that piggybacking going.
Yeah, FEMA doesn't like piggyback.
Yeah, no, we're not piggybacking anymore. That was an RFP that we did all out.
I remember
ourselves.
reviewing it.
Okay, so if we can get something to you guys on Wednesday, we will. If not, we'll definitely have you an update on that, where we are. I received a proclamation request. I know we just recently, passed our proclamation resolution. This is an organization called Daughters, it's the Rainbow River, a chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Proclamation for Constitution Week.
Well, that's local.
Call for request, President, Rainbow River Chapter of the National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution. That is a mouthful. They want us to do, and we've done this for, 2022, I know we've done it way prior to that too. So this was one of those things, it's the Rainbow River Chapter, so if you consider that local, we can, and they've prepared the proclamation, we don't have to do anything, but
We'll say, make sure they do it.
yeah, they've prepared it, so if y'all are good with that, we'll get that for September. That won't come back till September, but,
I'm good with it.
so they were really good in getting to it way in advance, so we were prepared for that. Okay, and then the last thing, trees for Ernie Mills Park. Opening.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you tell them, because I didn't get a chance to look at it.
So we still have 1,900, I want to say $1,913 from the Duke Energy grant money for the 125 park. And we've been doing all of the beautification at Ernie Mills. Well, the volunteer group wants to do, they've been wanting to do live oak trees. And as you all know, we went for the Catalyst grant, but unfortunately we weren't able to get it. However, I have only been able to get one quote for live oak trees. We had the arborist come out and he told us we needed between 30 and 65 gallon trees. Only one company in the area has been able to give me a quote. $375 for each tree, which seems very reasonable, at least from everyone I've talked to. So it's $375, $1,850.
Hold on a minute.
I think I'm right. At $1,850 for all 5 trees. So we want
That's
to.
under 1,900.
It is. So we have enough money to go and get 375 times 5.
1875.
Dang, I was so close. So 1875 for all 5 trees, which means we still have enough money left from the grant money to go ahead and purchase all 5 trees. The arborist came out and spoke with us, told us exactly where we want the trees. So we want to go ahead and move forward. That will be
pretty much the finishing touches. Chad's going to add a little bit to what I have to say. I have communicated with Public Works, and they said they would be able to go out, pick up the trees, bring them back. They've talked to FGUA, and they'll be able to borrow the machinery to be able to plant the trees and then mulch them. Everything else has been pretty much completed. They want to add a couple of benches to the park as well, which there's still some grant money from the 125 Park Fund. So 2 new benches, 5 trees around that big, huge open area. And then all the signage and everything has been completed. And then, so we're thinking everything should be able to be done by the end of September, so that we can have an unveiling of the brand new beautified Ernie Mills Park early October. And we'll come back to you in September for y'all to pick a date that would be good for all of you. But we're going to invite all the volunteers back, and Duke Energy's representation, and the chamber has agreed to go in on it with us to do the unveiling as well. So we can make it a really big event. But the park looks amazing. I don't know if y'all have seen all the flowers and everything that over there, but that should be it. And then the park will be completely re-beautified, if that's a word.
And you got a way to plant those things, Chad?
The trees, yeah, with the excavator we get from
FGUA.
Yeah, they said they have one. There's one behind rock line.
Because that's concrete under that dirt.
Well, we need that. That's where
You're gonna need something pretty strong.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that
a
sounds
good-
good to
I
me.
might assume because this is grant money
Right.
and that Chad will be doing the work, that we don't need to do Tim's project form.
Right.
Would Tim be wanting a project form? I'm asking in his absence.
That is back in Mr. Inskeep's lap right now, because he said he gave it to me. I started modifying it, formatting it differently so that it read better, and he told me to stop, not spend any more time on it, give it back to him, and he would finish it. And so I'm waiting on him to send it back to me. He's not finished it yet.
Let's just move on.
And before I get in trouble with him, I failed to bring up his comment on number 12. Santa in the park. Let me just back up because
Okay.
he wanted his input in the record. This is more of a volunteer item, not government, removed from budget and staff workload burden. If an organization would like to do this, we can authorize them usage of the park, just for the record.
Okay.
Okay. Then I don't have anything else except I had a note, which I'm sure Chad will be able to speak to, is, did I cover everything? Oh, yes, the security system at Public Works. So can you, okay, thank you. That's all you, Chad. Go.
I was gonna keep it short, but we got all the electric meters and gas meters removed off the bills and stuff, so we should no more bills on them.
Good.
Garage doors will be installed on April 23rd.
April 23rd.
August, my bad.
Okay, I was gonna say April. Okay.
August 23rd.
Got it.
When Michelle was talking about the Ernie Mills Park, we had the trees, the benches, the signs we have there. We have to finish building one for the Duke Energy stuff, which we plan on doing, having that done by sometime in September and a reveal in October. We got the 2 quotes for ADT and Johnson Control. They're not far off, but I believe ADT is wrong because they give us a fire alarm system, and I was looking over. They have way more than we need, way more high tech than what we need. So I believe that price can be adjusted. So I want to talk to them tomorrow, and then I get to just have it sent out to all the council members they can look over.
Okay.
Next meeting on the 2 DD stations over there. Everything is in place now. They just put the transformers and everything, poles are set. We're waiting for Duke Energy to make the connection, and that'll be live. Don't have a date on when they'll do that yet.
Sure.
All of our vehicles we had that was surplus, they're at the auction place. That auction will be August 11th. So that'll be coming up on when all that is. Relocated the welcome sign out front.
I saw that.
Lady smile when she goes in.
I can see the sign
You
again.
relocated that one, you relocated the one going 40 going out of town.
Everything's on the city property now.
Yeah, it's all good.
Moving from the poles.
when they were putting that infrastructure in over here for the
Right.
crosswalk, it just blocked half the sign. You couldn't see it anymore.
Right.
It was
It needed
terrible.
to be moved.
So we got rid of the dead tree and moved the sign in.
There you go.
So,
Yeah, I saw you all out there doing that.
so last week I did a reveal, the paddleboard sign that they was at, we had the Blue Run Park.
Okay.
And they had that jam got together. Thursday the 10th, we have TNT will be at Box Springs down there. We've worn that drain out and flood in that area, so hopefully we'll see what caused it and take care of the flooding down there. Get
When will
that.
that be? When?
That'll be Thursday, they'll be down there.
Thursday.
Yep. We got that all lined up and done. And Mandy brought up something that sparked me a little bit. The carpet quote was pretty under budget. Maybe we can look at the Public Works building for the other part.
I hope it ain't $15,000 for your building.
No,
You don't have but about 4 offices.
yeah, but the carpet's probably from the 60s.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that,
Right.
but I'm joking with you. But
Yeah, but I'm thinking-
I mean, maybe we ought to figure out what it costs to do that.
Yeah, I could get them to come over there and give you a quote. If
If
council's
we
okay
got,
with us
we
using
got
some of
another
that money.
$15,000, I mean, it's already been in the budget, and I assume the budget was last year, don't it?
It's been in the budget for about 3 years. or
That's
4
what I was
years.
thinking, so we're good.
We can
Yeah,
use
get
one,
them out there.
we can use 1 cent sales tax money for that. Why should we use general fund capital replacement reserve money? I'm sorry, I had to open my mouth.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, Chad did that. I mean, I've been in your office, you could stand some new
No
carpet.
green carpet.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
It's shaggy too, isn't it?
Was.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was, yeah.
Before it got mowed. Well, that was like I said.
Got
Shaggy
mowed.
Before it got mowed.
Chad, do you have an alarm, your alarm system in the budget for next year, or were you waiting on the quotes? I don't
We
recall.
did a budget, I think 60, no, we're waiting on the quotes. That was-
Okay.
For the alarm system?
Yeah, I didn't think that was
I
in
think
the
we had
budget.
budgeted something else on there, yeah, we had to come back with quotes, we had it in,
Uh-huh. So
Tim
please don't,
wanted the other quotes and stuff, I think we had to take out, because we had no idea. If
okay.
we want fire systems, alarm systems.
Don't let me
No, we-
not put something in.
We'll have it in there.
Okay.
And I'm just waiting on the date also for a reinspection from Marion County Fire to clear all of our buildings since they're all compliant.
Okay.
Except for Apatow Building, which their company's taking care of that system. And
Okay.
they just don't have a schedule yet.
Okay.
I think that's it for me.
And Chad, did ADT ever come out to give you quotes for over there?
Yeah, ADT did. I got all the quotes, but we jacked up our fire alarm system way bigger
So
than
you're
we
still
need, but everything
negotiating?
else. They were still under the price of Johnson Control, but I think it can be half of what they give me
Okay.
to give a total price. But they are $953 under Johnson Control right now, and only $6 on a monthly fee under there.
So you won't be ready for anything to go on the agenda for approval Wednesday?
I would say yes, I would be.
You are gonna be ready?
Yeah, because, I mean, they're already under, $1,000 under.
Okay.
What Johnson is, plus I think they'll come down more once we take off some of the high-end stuff. we might need.
Because I need something before the 21st.
We'll put that on the regular agenda, since we haven't seen anything yet.
And I can try to get that tomorrow and send it out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
That's all for me.
You're good. Okay. That's all. Jan, you want to speak?
Oh, no, I'm done.
Poured out, ain't it? All right. I guess next is council comments.
I have comments. Actually, it's give you all some information. ORC, along with everybody else here, is recognizing that there are problems going on in the river and that they need to be addressed. And there's going to be, it's not open to the public. There's going to be a forum of a panel of people meeting at Senator Dennis Jones' residence. Again, this is not open to the public. The panel's already been chosen and invited. I'm on the panel, and we're going to be addressing more law enforcement after regular law enforcement leaves the river, which is about 6 p.m. Also, we're going to go back to both the state park and KP hole about numbers of people they're putting into the river. And the worst part is there was started 2.5 years ago, an initiative that we went to the state park and said, educate your people before you put them in the water. They need to listen to 10 rules of the river. And they did that and they stopped. They stopped doing it. Yep, and they stopped doing it simply because they hired new help, and it was taking up too much time, and you gotta put the next group in, you gotta run back and pick up these people.
So they can drown, so it's
Yeah,
okay, it takes too long.
Yeah, they also, after that guy drowned, actually,
Yeah.
the state park was making the clients wear PFDs. That went on just for the rest of that summer season. This year, there were PFDs. Another thing is, we're also going to have a conversation with our outfitters here. Nathan Witt is all on board. He said, I'll herd up the other outfitters. Let's go to that agenda that before we put people in the river, they must listen to the 10 rules and see if it will make a difference. A lot of this is ignorance.
Well, I didn't know that stopped. I know we had a big push that year to get it done, and they were doing it.
Yeah, and they stopped.
Okay.
So we're gonna see what we can do to
All right,
improve any situation.
good.
Part of it is safety, but also because of the problems. Now we're seeing more erosion on the riverbanks. People are mooring and climbing around, walking around.
You're gonna have this panel. Who is invited?
Jeff Sowards, Ryan Smart of Florida Springs Council. Jeff Sowards, of course, is our aquatic reserve, and myself. Bill Vibert is now president of RRC, and we're just going to try to get together, get a plan, and start communicating with as many parties as possible as soon as we do that.
All right, good deal.
We're also, we're going to write letters to FWC so let's see if they can help us, like they have helped WikiWatchy with their problems.
Right. I know Ron has worked a lot with FWC
Yes.
and everybody on this whole problem around the ramp. I don't know if you could get him there, but he would be able to tell
He
you.
won't be there, but that's the step B.
Okay, well, that's fine.
That's step B.
But he's been working with all
Yes.
these law enforcement people trying to control that thing down there. And it's, like they say, the problem is they can control it while they're sitting there in a boat. But as soon as they leave, boom, people are going to go back to what they want to do. And we got to educate them a little better than that.
We're going to try, we should try it.
Right.
See what it leads to.
All right, you got anything, Rex?
Yeah, just real fast, the lady who runs the fish market over here, I was talking to her the other day. She wanted me to bring up about the increased crime. And she said her husband is the manager of the Walmart, and he said now they're just getting people in the morning, and especially in public, are just getting constantly accosted by vagrants and homeless people. So he said he's had to step in now 2 or 3 times, and that they've had a lot more break-ins. I think she lives right over here on Walnut. She said that they've had people with stuff stolen that they're not even reporting anymore because they don't think anything gets done. So anyway, the other thing she wanted to bring up was that Chief McQuaid, evidently, according to her story, one of the first things he did was he got rid of the citizens volunteers, and they used to have volunteers. So like if they had a traffic accident, they would call the volunteers out. They were trained to review the traffic so the officers could leave. He got rid of that. And she said, would I be willing to bring it up so that maybe our new chief could look at that? And that they put together a women's self-defense program that they went on. And she'd raised about $7,000. And one of the things he did was he killed the program and took all of her equipment and gave it to Bellevue.
Oh, Jesus.
So anyway, she was interested in seeing about getting that back.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, go to Chris and Ron and discuss those things. They have, every time I've told them about about stuff like this, man, they have hopped all over and done whatever we got to do.
Okay, well, anyway, that was the two things she wanted to bring up. The other thing, I talked to Art Jones today. He said they're working on getting the rainbow grant to clean up the river. The biggest problem now is the Army Corps of Engineers. They don't have a time when they'll be available to do it. So he said they don't know when, but things are moving.
Rex, what was that you said about Bellevue?
What?
What was it you said about Bellevue?
She said that she had gone out and solicited for $7,000 worth of equipment that they were using to train. They were all accredited at training women in self-defense. She said they were going to the University of Florida and doing it. And it was a program run through the police department. And then she said when Chief McQuaid came in, he killed that program and took all their equipment, $7,000 worth, and gave it to Bellevue.
That's where his buddy is.
Who now runs, who has the program up there.
Interesting. I didn't know. That
Not
you had
surprising.
$7,000 worth of equipment that
Okay.
got donated.
I didn't know that either, but whatever.
We could tell you more, but I don't think that we have enough time.
Okay, Julianne, you have anything? I don't have anything. Okay, city attorney, you have something.
Council, the only thing I have for you is I've mentioned a few times, that this particular legislative session has resulted in a lot of new statutes that will be applicable. So I have a comprehensive memorandum that will be coming your way shortly. Probably a good time to discuss it. I mean, everything will be there for you to review, touching on everything that was adopted, along with the business impact statements, how to comply with that, even some of the things on permitless carry. So quite a number of materials, perhaps in September. I know September is a busy time for you all, but I think the men will speak for themselves. We might schedule some time just if you have any questions or something along to go over it at a council meeting. And so that way the public can kind of see it too and be familiar with some of the legislation because it does impact them. But I can coordinate that with Mandy. In the meantime, I'll just work on getting the memorandum into your hands. And I will forward to Mandy very shortly the sex offender ordinance that was adopted by jurisdiction in Lake County for your review, just as a model, that something similar could be adopted here. So that's all coming your way. I have nothing else to report.
Okay. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
No, sir. I have one hand raised in Zoom.
We have two people in the back.
Okay, I've got two people in the back. All right. Did you have somebody on Zoom?
I don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, you have me on Zoom.
I have one hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, well, let's do the people in the audience.
Okay.
Y'all decide, one of y'all come up.
Ladies first.
Chad wanted to say something. He had his hand raised before we did.
Oh, Chad first.
I want to bring up something too. Just I know we focus on the Blue Run Park and stuff, the swimming and stuff that's going on there. We have got some complaints of the boat ramp now. Of people starting to swim down here, jumping off the docks and everything. That the boaters are having problems getting in and out and taking out. So we might want to see about nipping that before it turns into.
Oh, it will.
That
I mean, that's what I was afraid of. We address it over here at the kayak ramp, and they just moved down.
It sounds like they're out here now using the dock, jumping in, the boaters are trying to unload.
I can't wait till they start jumping off the bridge.
Not here, but we have got the planes of that already.
You saw where the guy was very pleased that we took the limb down.
Yeah, we cut them down the other day.
Yeah. He sent me an email this morning saying he was up here this weekend, and he was very glad to see the limb was gone.
Down there, working on the pothole in front there too, trying to get that done.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Did you need my name and address again?
Oh, yes, by all means, by all
Oh, okay, Viola Stove, 18755 Southwest 60th Street, Dunnellon. I just wanted to touch on 3 points that were discussed this evening. The first one was, we talked about what properties that the city owns that might be advantageous to sell. The one I'm thinking would be very advantageous to sell is the one that's next to the Behavioral Solutions. It's on the corner of Illinois, I think, and Chestnut. They have taken over the city's properties with private party. Sell it to them, makes money off of it.
Right, I know they took over.
Yeah,
so,
they
yeah.
literally did. Well, I'm not going to mention number 2 because it's too simple and I don't want you to put in the ordinances, so I'll skip that one.
Okay.
Number 3, Anthony Marino. He's the fire prevention supervisor for Marion County. Him and I talked. He talked to Kelly first, then he talked to me. he says that we have to pull a permit through the city first. Then he'll be notified. He will call each of us individual owners to set up the appointment, come out and do the inspection for $40. If we fail the inspection, he redoes it and it's another $40. If you want his direct phone number, it is 352-291-8065. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the gentleman I called about the $40 and the fee, and I talked to him, and I've got his phone number.
But you
Yeah,
guys had
I didn't realize we
mentioned that you
had,
didn't know that the city
we had to
was
do a
involved.
permit. I didn't know we had to do a permit.
Yeah, he told me that he talked to
Okay.
Kelly, and Kelly said, yes, that we have to pull a permit through the city, and then he'll be notified, and then we
Well-
do our inspection.
Well, we need to make that as part of when they come in to register.
We'll get in touch with him and figure out exactly what he's talking
Right.
about.
This guy Anthony's really good to talk to. Okay. Okay, Amber.
Amber Stern, 11426 Hendricks Drive. So I recently had the carpet done in my house by JDG Flooring, and they did a great job. I asked him for roughly a 50 by 200 quote just now. He said if you guys offered a dumpster and helped move the furniture, he could do it for $11,900 on the weekends or whenever.
Wow.
So
Okay.
he's willing to start immediately, so let's just save some money if we can. Jan, if we could find out if we can amend the management plan on 9 Island Cove. I don't want to kick a gift horse in the mouth. This is so important that we have the green space. And are there more funds available through the wildlife corridor? What is the bare minimum that we have to do in order to maintain this park? Can citizens help pay or volunteers to maintain this property? It's super important that we get this done and it doesn't turn into a Blue Room Park fiasco where they pave everything. It was so much prettier before all of that asphalt.
Right.
I'm not going to try to be rude or nasty tonight. I know I come across that way often. I think we've moved in a positive direction here on this ordinance, but I want you to know what I'm getting from my guests and from other people that I talk to. So far, 2 small intimate wedding groups have canceled the reservation. There were only about 12 people. I no longer have a bridge to my island. I don't want to put another one up for liability purposes. Plus, it's better for the island to not have people all over it. The negative press has created a lot of cancellations for me and for others. So that might make some of you happy. Doesn't make us happy, though. They're simply afraid to make plans that can be suddenly shut down due to the ordinance. I also had to let a full-time contractor go because of the mounting legal fees that I've had to budget for on the ever-changing attack on us. Many once excited STR owners feel that Dunnellon has lost its luster. So many of us had high hopes of purchasing and remodeling historic downtown Dunnellon, but have decided to stop purchasing within the city limits, leaving dilapidated Dunnellon status quo. The bad blood this has created has sent many running from this town, including potential homeowners. People that I've spoken to want to move to progressive green cities where parks and recs are the focal point. And we have all of that here. We have that opportunity here, but it's being constantly missed by the city council. There's some other things that I was going to say tonight, but I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Anybody else? In the audience? Zoom, we're good?
Zoom.
Oh, you have a Zoom.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, very good, very good. It's my new experience from Dwight Porter, 10483 North Silver Lake. I've listened to your meeting, and you're going over topics that we've been very patient to get to for a long time. On selling some of the city property, that was broached I think when Nathan or Walter were mayors, when the city was in dire straits, there was a list put out. We all studied it, and some of the properties we've been trying to get on the auction list for, well, that long, 5-7 years. When you investigate that list, there's a couple of properties that would suit you well to sell. One is a back alley behind CJ's transmission and the tire shop that I'm sure they would like to buy and utilize. They're landlocked and can be used, but only by the business. It generates city revenue, and it allows them to not park on the sidewalk because they have such limited space. You'll find a 10-acre parcel on the river that might sound very good to put on the list, but I would advise you not to. Your community development director that's moved on, I heard with her about that, and she said you may need that, put a water line under the river in the future. So, and it's a swampland that blocked it. As far as the 9 Island Cove Park, that's been going on for a long time. There's almost no one in attendance that even knows that process. And some of the driving forces that got that done this far have passed on. You can't even have them now. But I can tell you that a lot of legwork has been done on that project. If you do sign off on the letter that you read, a lot of the folks at the county level and in Tallahassee have been briefed on that for years. They're waiting for Dunnellon to figure out how to get it done and approved to take care of it. You have not-for-profits that have agreed in the past to step in and fill in the excess 10% you're missing and also help. So you've waited so long, you have to start that process over. But I think that folks have been approached about that also. And I would suggest that it might be good politics for the city to step up and approve that. You've got people at the county and state level that are watching us stumble ball continuously. And at some point, if you go back in 5 years, they're not going to take it all. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have one more.
Okay.
Raymond Rice?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir?
All right, Raymond Rice, 11760 Cherokee Circle. 3 things. First of all, the simplest one is I am very active in recreation and doing things, backpacking. Most everywhere that I've ever gone, there is an online waiver that I have to read and sign before they will issue me a permit or anything else for anything I'm doing. So for all these outfitters that are using the river, if they don't want to spend the time to have them and educate these people, they can have an online waiver. Most everything online now, it's a simple process. And if they get to the outfitter and they don't have the waiver, then they go and sit and fill it out just like you go to a doctor's office. You hear, you read the rules, you fill it out. No one has the excuse now to be trampling on the sides of the river or going onto people's personal property. Second thing, I would like to add, propose a verbiage into the cost of the fee that after a year, after an annual review, to have an acceptable bandwidth percentage. So if the fee is exceeding what the costs are, then it could be adjusted, or if you're finding it's not enough, then you could bring that up, but have a bandwidth that is on there 20%, 25%, something, but have that in the verbiage of the fee. The last thing I would like to bring up is just line item 397 in the proposed ordinance, STR ordinance, and that is the 2-hour in-person, once you're notified, you need to be on the property. And I guess my question is why? Why is it in-person needed to be on the property? With the cell phones and phone services now, there's residents, seasonal owners, snowbirds, STR owners that may be out of the state. or working more than 2 hours away from Dunnellon, the verbiage should read a reasonable time frame and/or a 2-hour window to meet with a city rep at a mutually agreeable time. I think the 2-hour time frame is unreasonable. That is what I'd like, and again, I would like to thank the city council for as much work as you put into this thing. It seems now that it's more of an agreement than one-sided. And like Wally said in the beginning, everyone's not going to be happy, and that's a good thing. That means we can compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I hit a second? All in favor?
Aye.